Chapter 402. She broke the legs of the man at the peak of the martial royal realm with a kick. In the latter's incredulous gaze, she lifted her leg and smashed it down. Boom! The man at the peak of the martial royal realm was heavily hit in the shoulder by Luo Qingtong. With both legs broken, he was forced to kneel down by this huge force. Ah! He screamed miserably, no longer as arrogant as before. With both legs broken, if Luo Qingtong had not smashed him, he would have naturally collapsed to the ground. However, Luo Qingtong's heavy smashing caused his body to be pressed down by a huge force, and he knelt down directly. The broken bones in his legs were forcefully protruding out. The sharp bone fragments pierced into the tender flesh of his wounds. In an instant, the man at the peak of the martial royal realm was in so much pain that he almost fainted. Luo Qingtong, how dare you? Why wouldn't I dare? Luo Qingtong's voice was cold. If your master had been paying attention to the Luo family, he would have taken action long ago after you were caught. Since he didn't, it means that you were sent here alone. Not to mention that I broke your legs. Even if I killed you, no one would know that it was done by the Luo family. Who would believe that the Luo family could kill a man at the peak of the martial royal realm? You! The man at the peak of the martial royal realm was shocked and angry. Half of what he said just now was indeed to trick Luo Qingtong into letting him go. He didn't expect that she could see through it so easily. And she also guessed that he had no helpers here. Go to the Colosseum and catch some fighting beasts. Luo Qingtong's voice was cold. She flicked a pill into the mouth of the man at the peak of the martial royal realm. After the incident with King Dongli, she was traumatized by the idea of touching these people. Now she would try her best not to touch them if she could. Luo Qingtong, what did you give me? After Luo Qingtong's pill entered his mouth, the expert at the peak of the martial royal realm instantly felt the aura in his body change. An indescribable smell was emitted. When he saw the ferocious beasts with green and red eyes staring at him and panting heavily, he suddenly realized that the aura he was exuding was the aura of the mother beast when it was in its infancy. And these fighting beasts that Luo Qingtong found were all male beasts. Luo Qingtong, what are you doing? Even though the expert at the peak of the martial royal realm had been trained to have a strong will, when he saw the ferocious beasts closing in on him, he was terrified to the extreme. These male beasts were all extremely ferocious beasts. Once they pounced, the peak martial royal realm expert shuddered at the thought of that terrifying scene. His legs were broken by Luo Qingtong. He fell to the ground and couldn't move. He couldn't even escape. Tell me the name of your master. Luo Qingtong's voice was cold. Otherwise, you can wait to enjoy the service of these ferocious beasts. As she spoke, she raised her hand, and the experts of the Evil Valley loosened the reins in their hands. In an instant, those ferocious beasts couldn't wait to rush forward, roaring wildly. No! Seeing those ferocious beasts pouncing on him, some of them even pushed him to the ground and pressed on him. The expert at the peak of the martial royal realm completely collapsed. He hurriedly shouted, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. My master is. Chapter 403. Oh, not bad. You actually managed to get my name. But the words that were about to come out of his mouth suddenly changed into another voice. The body of the peak martial royal realm suddenly twitched violently. As if he had touched a forbidden switch, he suddenly opened his mouth and howled. That voice was as mournful as a ghost's howl in the dark night. In the next second, his body quickly shriveled and shrunk. In an instant, there was only a skeleton left. Get out of the way! Seeing the change of the peak martial royal realm, Luo Qingtong's pupils suddenly shrank. She immediately ordered the experts of the Evil Valley, who were leading the fighting beasts, to get out of the way. Boom! As soon as she finished speaking, the expert at the peak of the martial royal realm suddenly jumped up. Roar! The violent fighting beast that was half the height of a person on top of him was instantly torn into pieces by him. Countless black auras were emitted from his body. In an instant, those fighting beasts that were close to him roared miserably. They were corroded by the black aura emitted by the peak martial royal realm expert. In an instant, they turned into ghastly white bones. The black aura was still spreading and expanding. Wherever it passed, it corroded everything. Those experts of the Evil Valley who were leading the fighting beasts couldn't escape in time. Although they had already retreated quickly when Luo Qingtong spoke, they were still one step too late. Several people who were closer to him were infected by the black aura that spread from the peak martial royal realm expert. The pain was bone-rotting and heart-eroding. The black aura corroded the skin as soon as it touched it. In an instant, ghastly white bones appeared. Poison! It was an extremely strong and overbearing poison. The bloody light in Luo Qingtong's eyes was piercingly cold. In an instant, she dashed out. Don't move! The poisoned experts of the Evil Valley were in so much pain that they wanted to roll on the ground. But when they heard Luo Qingtong's words, they instantly endured the pain and stood still. Some people, half of their bodies were almost corroded, but they were still holding on. Because they knew that if there was really one person who could save them, it was only Luo Qingtong. She had to believe in her master. Looking at the corpses of the fighting beasts on the ground, they felt a chill in their heart. Bang! Luo Qingtong's figure flashed in front of the peak martial royal realm expert in an instant. He didn't even look at the black aura surrounding his body. With a bang he punched out. Master! Seeing Luo Qingtong's actions, the Evil Valley's people who had retreated to a safe area in time cried out anxiously. Yi Qianxian, on the other hand, was shoved into Luo Qingtong's arms the moment she made her move. Looking at the girl's fierce and austere actions, his round little face didn't have much of a change in expression. This woman will be fine. Someone as cunning as her wouldn't make a move if she wasn't certain. The other party was thinking too much if he wanted to take advantage of her. However, the other party's ability to control his mind remotely and detonate the poison in the body of the expert at the peak of the martial emperor realm. Yi Qianxian narrowed his eyes. Bang! Luo Qingtong's fist directly broke through the layer of black aura surrounding the expert at the peak of the martial royal realm and accurately hit his head. In an instant, the head of the expert at the peak of the martial royal realm exploded. Chapter 404. It was a pure black bead, which exuded a strong aura of life force. Needless to say, the power of flesh and blood of the expert at the peak of the martial royal realm was now in this pure black bead, which was also the source of the black aura around the expert at the peak of the martial royal realm. Bang! Luo Qingtong grabbed the bead and crushed it into powder. The next second, she waved her hand and scattered the powder to the experts of the Evil Valley, who had been eroded. Those people still listened to Luo Qingtong's words and stood still. Some of them had been completely corroded into bones and were motionless. They believed in Luo Qingtong. Swish! As Luo Qingtong waved her hand, the poison in the experts of the Evil Valley was instantly detoxified. Not only that, their bodies, which had been eroded before, also recovered quickly after being replenished by the power of flesh and blood. The power of flesh and blood of the expert at the peak of the martial royal realm was amazing. All of it had been condensed into a black bead, which was emitting poisonous fog without restraint. If Luo Qingtong hadn't seen through the trick and grabbed the bead, the area within dozens of miles around the body of the expert at the peak of the martial royal realm would have been filled with poisonous fog, and not a blade of grass would have been left alive. It would have been a land of death. The person behind the scenes had such a vicious heart and ruthless methods. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes slightly. When the bead was caught, he followed the trace of connection he saw with his eye technique. With a swoosh, he gathered the poisonous fog around the corpse of the peak martial royal realm expert that had not completely dissipated in his hand. Her 5 fingers moved slightly and changed the arrangement of the poison in an instant. Then she raised her hand and threw it out. Hiss! In a place far away from the eastern fence country, a beautiful woman in luxurious clothes, who looked very noble and graceful, suddenly took a step back. A circle of black was suddenly printed on her snow-white and tender fingers. And this trace of black was still expanding. Your Highness! Seeing the noble and graceful girl's action, the maidservants around were instantly shocked and hurriedly rushed up. Your Highness, how are you? What was going on? Who attacked you? The group of maidservants had sharp eyes. Almost in an instant, they surrounded the luxuriously dressed young girl and quickly became alert. These people were all martial emperors. They were powerful enough to establish an empire, but here, they were just a group of ordinary maidservants. Don't worry, no one attacked me. Feng Yuan waved his hand and dismissed them. Indeed, no one had ambushed her. It was just that when she was on her way out of the palace, she suddenly felt that someone had violated the prohibition she had set. Someone wanted to reveal her identity, so she diverted a bit of her attention to deal with it. Unexpectedly, he was injured by someone else instead. Looking at the greenish-black color that was spreading from her jade-white fingers, her expression turned slightly cold. The other party's poison techniques were very profound. He was actually able to counter the poison by following the connection in his mind. Not only that, he even modified the poison. Feng Luan tried several times, but he still couldn't get rid of the trace of poison on his finger. Suddenly, his brows furrowed. Let's go back to the palace first. Also, send someone to check if there are any missing or dead people outside. Send me a list of names for me to check. She wanted to find out who was spying on her identity behind her back. Chapter 405. At the same time, Luo Xining was lying in a corner of the dilapidated house in Dongli country. She could not believe what she had seen. When those fighting beasts were brought up, she had already been dragged to the side. That unforeseen event just now, she didn't suffer any injuries. Instead, she saw everything that happened. Luo Xining was the happiest person when the poison in the peak martial royal realm exploded. Since she was already living a life worse than death, it would be great if she could drag Luo Qingtong down with her. But what did she see? Luo Xining saw how Luo Qingtong had solved the disaster so easily. The poison that could corrode a martial king or martial royal realm expert into bones seemed to be useless in front of Luo Qingtong. She had solved it in an instant. Luo Xining saw that the flesh and blood of the martial king realm experts from the Evil Valley had grown back. Their strength had increased. Luo Xining felt as if all her strength had been sucked out of her. She collapsed on the ground. There was no hope. She finally knew why she had lost to Luo Qingtong. It turned out that Luo Qingtong had not shown any strength in front of her. She thought that she was strong, but she was nothing in front of Luo Qingtong. Even the person she had been relying on, the person who had poisoned Luo Qingtong, could not do anything to her. Luo Xining's heart was filled with despair. She collapsed on the ground like a dead dog. She had lost all hope and vitality. No one could save her anymore. No one could save her from Luo Qingtong. Luo Xining realized this clearly. She rolled her eyes and fainted in despair. Send someone to drag her in. Luo Qingtong's voice was calm. She did not look at Luo Xining anymore. The person behind the scenes had been exposed. Luo Xining was no longer of any use. Luo Qingtong did not want to dirty her hands for such a person. Let her enjoy herself here. She would kneel, cry, and be in despair. She had to finish what she had done. Yes. Young miss, don't worry. I will definitely watch over her and let her suffer the torture that she arranged herself. The bandit leader still had some lingering fear in his heart. That terrifying poisonous fog just now was really too terrifying. He could vaguely feel the strength of the people around Luo Qingtong. Seeing that they had almost been corroded into white bones, and that he had almost died along with them, he felt an indescribable fear in his heart. He was also in awe of Luo Qingtong. If it wasn't for this young Miss Luo, all of them might have died here. Moreover, it was an extremely miserable one. Thinking of this, he nodded and bowed to Luo Qingtong, promising that Luo Xining would enjoy the best service. Yes. Luo Qingtong answered casually and walked to the corpse of the man at the peak of the martial royal realm who had shrunk into a skeleton. The person behind the scenes was very cautious. She had placed a gag order on her subordinates. Once her name was mentioned, she would be able to sense it. She would then control her mind and detonate the trap in the body. It was a pity that she did not manage to kill them all. Luo Qingtong kept all the things on the body of the man at the peak of the martial royal realm. She planned to find a time to go to the Black Field and find out who the person was. Let's go. She got up and was about to leave. Chapter 406. Why are you leaving? Yi Qianxian popped his head out of her arms. Little Ming Zun was only as big as a dot. He jumped in front of Luo Qingtong and held her hand that was retracting into her sleeve. Wipe the blood off your hand and apply medicine. He was furious. This woman didn't know how to cherish herself. Didn't she know how to apply medicine when her hand was injured? She even said that she wanted to go back as if nothing had happened. Even if she wanted to go back, she had to apply medicine before going back. Ah! Luo Qingtong looked at her right hand following his movement. She saw a few wounds that were neither deep nor shallow, and blood was oozing out. She was injured when she broke through the black fog around the man at the peak of the martial royal realm. The poison of the black fog didn't have much effect on her. Luo Qingtong had the pupil technique, so she easily broke through the weakest part of the black fog. However, the man was at the peak of the martial royal realm. especially when the power of his flesh and blood exploded into the black fog. It had a lot of fierce aura. Luo Qingtong was a little injured when she broke his head and took out the bead. However, Luo Qingtong didn't care about such a small injury, but Yi Qianxian noticed it. It's okay. It's just a small injury. Luo Qingtong shook her hand and was about to get up. She looked up and saw Yi Qianxian's angry face. Her cheeks puffed up, and she squatted down again. Okay. She touched her forehead. I'll apply medicine. Don't be angry. This man probably thought that her hand was dirty because of the bleeding. How could a man be so obsessed with cleanliness? However, looking at Yi Qianren's condition, if she didn't wipe off the bloodstains on her hands and apply some medicine, he would definitely not let her hug him. With his thin arms and legs, how long would it take for him to go back to the Luo family? Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. She took out a bottle of medicine and poured some on her wounds. It washed the blood off the back of her hand and healed the wounds. Is it done? She showed her white and tender palm to Yi Qianxian. Come here. She smiled and stretched out her hand to Yi Qianxian. Let's go home. Humph. Yi Qianxian snorted, but there was a ripple in his heart. Go home? This sentence suddenly touched a part of his heart. He looked up at Luo Qingtong's beautiful face that was so close to his. For some reason, his heart softened. This woman had always been able to easily provoke his anger and eliminate it easily. I can't get hurt casually. Speaking of this, he felt a little awkward and then added, It's so dirty. As he spoke, he frowned and walked toward Luo Qingtong's hand with his short legs. He didn't know how cute and arrogant he looked. That expression of, I don't want to talk to you so soon, but since you're trying to please me, I'll forgive you reluctantly. Luo Qingtong couldn't help but laugh. That's not something I can control. Seeing that he was staring at her, Luo Qingtong held back her laughter and said, Okay, I'll try to be more careful in the future. As she spoke, she picked up little Ming Zun and kissed him on his little face. Then, she brought him back to the Luo family with a smile. As soon as they entered the door, a Luo family guard hurriedly ran out. Chapter 407. The old master is awake. The Iron Guard's words made Luo Qingtong very happy. Grandpa! Luo Qingtong carried Yi Qianxian and was about to rush to the old master's courtyard. However, she quickly reacted. Little Ming Zun must not be discovered by the old master. Otherwise, how would she explain to the old master? Her changes could be attributed to the inheritance of the immortal sex ruins. But Yi Qianren, could it be that she had to tell Grandfather Luo that she had accidentally imprisoned the soul fragment of the Supreme of Dark Region? It would be strange if the old master didn't have a heart attack. However, if she didn't bring Yi Qianxian with her, what if he ran away when she wasn't paying attention? Luo Qingtong wouldn't let her guard down just because Yi Qianxian was obedient, cute, and proud. If he seized the opportunity and ran away, she would be in trouble when his real body chased after her. Thinking about how she had forced that man left and right, Luo Qingtong felt a toothache. Just as she was in a dilemma, Little Pig, who had fainted due to overexertion, woke up in her sleeve. Haha. Master, am I very powerful? Little Pig jumped out of her sleeve. Before he could show off, he saw the little Yi Qianxian in Luo Qingtong's arms, and his mouth instantly opened wide. Snap! Because he was too shocked, his little hoof didn't hook onto Luo Qingtong's clothes and fell to the ground. He. Little Pig was so shocked that he didn't know how to speak. His 4 hooves kept moving on the ground. In the next second, it let out a howl and hopped around on the ground in circles. Why is he here? His pink and tender little hoof pointed straight at Yi Qianxian. Oh my god! Why is this terrifying man here? And why is he so intimate with this woman? Oh my god! What happened while he was unconscious? Why did it see such a horrifying thing the moment it woke up? Luo Qingtong was speechless at Little Pig's series of crazy reactions. This fellow was becoming more and more unreliable. Was it that exaggerated? On the other hand, Yi Qianxian stared coldly at Little Pig, who was pointing its hoof at him. Do you have a problem with me being here? His voice was icy cold. Thinking of this pig jumping directly into Luo Qingtong's arms, if it weren't for her, she was afraid that it would have been lying in Luo Qingtong's arms. She suddenly felt a burst of anger. I don't dare. Little Pig was terrified by his stare. However, it quickly reacted. Hi, that's not right. Why was this man so small? It looked at Yi Chenxian, who was about the same size as it, in Luo Qingtong's arms and widened its eyes. This appearance. Don't look at him. This is just a wisp of his soul, Luo Qingtong said and put little Ming Zun on the bed. It's good that you woke up. Help me look after him. I'm going to see Grandpa. I'll be back soon. While speaking, she suddenly remembered something and said to Little Pig, All right, don't bully him. If this pig knew that this man was just a wisp of his soul and didn't have any attack power, who knows what it would do to him? Little Pig looked at her with a speechless expression. With this man, who was the one bullying who? A wisp of soul was connected to the main body. If it bullied this man, did it want to die? Chapter 408. A piercingly cold gaze suddenly landed on Little Pig. Little Pig felt goosebumps all over his body. It turned its head to take a look and saw Yi Qianren crawling out from the soft blanket. His soft and adorable appearance was extremely adorable. However, Little Pig, who was facing Yi Qianren's deep and cold eyes, didn't feel anything at all. Oh my God, this man's gaze is so scary. What did I do wrong? Why is he staring at me like this? You're not allowed to speak. Yi Qianxian's cold voice rang in Little Pig's ears after Lu Qingtong left. Little Pig felt his hair stand on end after being stared at by Yi Qianxian. Although he still didn't understand the situation, he quickly nodded his head. Seeing this, Yi Qianxian coldly snorted and looked away. Little Pig breathed a sigh of relief when the pressure was relieved. With a swoosh, it ran to the other side of the bed and finally settled down. Oh my God! That scared me to death. Little Pig patted his chest with his hoof. Why is this man so crazy? What do you mean I'm not allowed to speak? I just want to tell that woman that I can't bully him. What's wrong with that? Wait a minute. Little Pig suddenly thought of something and looked at Yi Qianxian with his mouth wide open. His jaw almost fell to the ground. That woman, don't tell me she doesn't know that there's a connection between the soul fragment and the main body. Is this what this man doesn't want me to say? The corners of Little Pig's eyes twitched violently when he recalled the scene when Lu Qingtong hugged Yi Qianxian when he rushed out. Oh my God! So scary. Forget it, this man won't do anything to harm her anyway. I'll just pretend I don't know. With this thought in mind, Little Pig instantly felt at ease. That's right, I'm not betraying my master. I'm helping my master, okay? Otherwise, with that woman's cruel, cunning and lawless personality, who else could suppress her other than this man? Who else could be worthy of her and not be overshadowed by her radiance? It could only be this man. But before that, it still had something to ask. Hey, do you really like that woman? I said my master. It looked curiously at Yi Qianming, who had become small and delicate. The dignified underworld supremacy had turned into a kawaii pillow doll. Yet this man could still remain calm. It seemed that he was somewhat sincere towards that woman. Otherwise, with his identity, he would probably rather detonate this strand of soul than allow himself to become like this. That's between this sovereign and that woman. It has nothing to do with you. Yi Qianxian looked at it coldly. Just watch your mouth. Yi Qianxian had his own pride. He liked that woman and was willing to throw away his face for her. He was also willing to disregard his identity as an underworld venerable for her. However, there was no need for others to know about this. Especially with that woman's character, she was already lawless enough. If he let her know that he liked her so much that he couldn't extricate himself and chased after her again and again, wouldn't she go to heaven? Yi Qianxian coldly snorted in his heart when he recalled how Luo Qingtong had forcefully suppressed him and teased him. F***CK, serves you right for not being able to get your wife. Little Pig was almost angered to death by Yi Qianxian's words. It originally wanted to tell Yi Qianxian that Luo Qingtong thought he had captured her to deal with her. But since this man didn't appreciate it, then forget it. I'll just wait patiently. Let's see when that woman will understand my intentions. Chapter 409. At the same time, Luo Qingtong stepped into Grandfather Luo's room. Grandfather. Luo Qingtong was delighted to see the hale and hearty old man lying on the bed. After so many days of sleep and recuperation, Grandfather Luo was in much better condition than before, be it in terms of mental or physical strength. His hair, which had suddenly turned white due to the dissipation of his cultivation, was slowly turning black under Luo Qingtong's meticulous care. All the medicines that Luo Qingtong gave Old Master Luo were of the highest quality. They were all taken from the Tianyu Imperial Treasury. How could Grandfather Luo not be in good spirits? Qingtong. Grandfather Luo stood up happily when he heard Luo Qingtong's voice and saw his granddaughter standing outside. Before he could move, Luo Qingtong had already hurried to his side and supported him. Grandfather, you just woke up. Don't move around. Waking up from his coma meant that Grandpa Luo's body was in its best condition. Even so, he still had to be careful when it came to his physical strength and constitution. He'd be fine in a day or two. By then, Grandfather Luo would be able to train himself and return to his original strength. However, Luo Qingtong had a plan in mind. Old Master Luo had dispersed his cultivation and started cultivating again. She definitely wouldn't let him practice the same cultivation technique as before. If it was too low level, it would hinder Grandfather Luo's future development. Luo Qingtong had cultivated Yi Qianren's cultivation method and martial technique before, so she naturally knew how powerful a good cultivation method and martial technique was. However, the other party said that only he could cultivate Yi Qianren's cultivation method. Luo Qingtong didn't know the reason. She thought that Yi Qianxian meant that his cultivation method couldn't be taught to outsiders. It was one thing for her to cultivate it, but it wouldn't be appropriate for her to teach it to Grandfather Luo. Fortunately, there were cultivation methods in the Tianyu Imperial Treasury. Luo Qingtong picked a cultivation method that, as long as one was talented enough, could cultivate all the way to the martial emperor level. She gave it to Grandfather Luo for him to cultivate. Grandfather Luo also found out about the recent changes. He was indescribably shocked. He had not expected that so many things had happened during the period of time when he was unconscious and dispersing his cultivation. Fortunately, Qingtong had propped up the Luo clan. Fortunately, Qingtong had obtained the inheritance of the immortal sex ruins and became extraordinary. Otherwise, wouldn't the Luo clan have already been destroyed? Grandfather Luo felt a wave of lingering fear at this thought. As for the Luo family's second branch, this group of ingrates, he hated them to the bone. Whenever he thought about the Luo clan's destruction, he wanted to wring their heads off. If the foundation left by his ancestors was destroyed in his hands, how could he face the ancestors of the Luo clan in the future? Unfilial son. You bastard. Grandpa Luo was so angry that he slammed his fist on the table beside his bed, causing a loud noise to ring out. If not for the fact that he didn't have any strength left, the entire table would have been smashed to pieces. Grandfather, don't be angry. They've learned their lesson. Luo Qingtong smiled. But the Tianyu Imperial family. Grandfather Luo's heart was filled with hatred. Finally he sighed. Qingtong, I'm useless. He couldn't protect his granddaughter. She had to run around for the clan at such a young age. Grandfather Luo's heart ached. Chapter 4:10. How is that possible? Grandfather Luo shook his head. Tianyu's royal family treated you so badly. Even if you didn't want to cancel the engagement, I would have done it myself. He couldn't let his beloved granddaughter suffer such grievances. That's right, Grandfather. Grandpa, I'll handle this. Don't worry, I'll protect the Luo family. I won't let anyone bully the Luo clan. Luo Qingtong looked at Grandfather Luo and said word by word. Her evil eye's promise was as good as gold. If Grandfather Luo protected her, she would naturally protect him and the Luo clan. Not to mention, Tianyu's royal family was after her. Thinking of how Tianyu's royal family wouldn't cancel the engagement and didn't care about losing face, Luo Qingtong frowned. This was most likely Yu Wenma's fault. Otherwise, with Yu Wenxue and Tianyu's attitude towards her, this engagement would have been cancelled long ago. What was Yu Wenma thinking? Why was he so insistent on cancelling the engagement? And why did he insist on marrying her? It would have been fine if his love for the previous host was as deep as the sea. But according to Luo Qingtong's memories, Yu Wenma had never even looked at the previous host. Not only that, after being engaged for more than a decade, he hadn't even visited the previous host more than once. Every time he saw the previous host, his expression would be cold. Although his etiquette was very thorough, the arrogance and impatience in his eyes could be seen. The other party didn't like the original owner of the body, and was even against this engagement. But why didn't he want to cancel the engagement? Could it be that the previous host's mother was involved in something when she treated him? Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes as she thought about it. No matter what Yu Wenma was planning, if he wanted to marry her, it would depend on whether she was willing or not. Using power to oppress others? She would definitely return all of this to Tianyu's royal family. Along with what Yu Wenxue did. She would definitely call off this marriage. Not only would she cancel it, she would do it with a bang. Did Yu Wenma think he could force her? What a joke. Luo Qingtong sneered. After leaving grandfather Luo's room, Luo Qingtong returned to her room. She saw Little Pig curled up pitifully in a corner of her bed, while Yi Chenxian sat on her bed. Seeing her walk in, two pairs of eyes immediately looked over. Master! When Little Pig saw that Luo Qingtong had returned, he impatiently stomped his hooves and was about to pounce on her. It didn't want to stay with this man anymore. However, just as it raised its 4 hooves, a pair of eyes stared at it. In an instant, Little Pig, who was about to leap up, froze. F***CK. Was there any justice in this world? Who exactly was this woman's pet? Where was this man's face as the underworld venerable? Was it really okay to act cute like this? Little Pig was filled with grief and indignation as he watched Yi Chenxian walk past him to Luo Qingtong. He looked up at her and said, "Hug." Okay. Luo Qingtong looked at the tiny Yi Chenxian. Even if this man had a straight face, he was still so adorable that it made her want to explode. She bent down and picked him up, then habitually kissed him on the lips. Her clear eyes curved into the shape of a crescent moon. Traces of blood mist rippled in her eyes, like clouds and rosy clouds. It was indescribably beautiful. "Good boy," she said with a smile. "Oh my God." Little Pig was watching from the side. He immediately covered his eyes with his 2 hooves. No wonder this man didn't want me to tell her about the connection between the main body and the subsoul. This woman probably didn't know that she had already been taken advantage of, right? Chapter 4:11. Yi Chenxian sat on the seat of honor in the main hall, his eyes slightly downcast and deep. Luo Qi. He felt the warm touch on his lips. During this period of time, he often felt this warm and soft feeling on his lips. This feeling was both strange and familiar. Yi Chenxian knew that woman was kissing his divided soul again. Whenever that woman faced him, she would either run or escape. The only time she behaved was when he went to the Tianyu Empire to catch her, but she thought that he didn't know her identity. Now, facing his divided soul, she kissed and hugged him. Thinking of this, Yi Chenxian snorted coldly. At this moment, he finally believed that Luo Qingtong was right when she said that it would be better if he was weaker. She really wanted him to be weaker so that she could do whatever she wanted to him, didn't she? Thinking of this, Yi Chenxian was in a good mood and his previous depression disappeared. Woman with evil intentions but no guts. Thinking of how Luo Qingtong attacked him every time when he was suppressed and unable to move, Yi Chenxian's lips curled up. At this moment, a voice came from outside. "Master, the whereabouts of the Grand Dean of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin have been found." Xueqi walked in. "Speak." Yi Chenxian sat up straight and looked at him with shining eyes. That divided soul and mind were imprisoned, and the connection between the 9 Phoenix Ring and the 10-sided Dragon Ring was also cut off. If Yi Chenxian wanted to find Luo Qingtong, he had to start with the Holy Pen. But the latter was now taken away by the Grand Dean of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. Therefore, Yi Chenxian had to find her. Because only by finding out who the Holy Pen spirit who attacked Luo Qingtong came from, could he find the whereabouts of that woman. That woman didn't hesitate to imprison his soul fragment, which meant that his soul fragment must have found her true identity, making it impossible for her to escape. Thinking of this, Yi Chenxian was very happy. He would be able to find that woman soon. This knowledge put him in a good mood. "In the land beyond the clouds," Xueqi said with a frown. "Master, that place isn't peaceful at the moment. It is said that a treasure may have appeared there. Many top powerhouses of True Spill Continent are rushing towards that place." "Your body." Xueqi was worried. With master status, if he were to appear there, he would definitely attract suspicion and jealousy from all sides. The hidden danger in master's body hasn't disappeared, so he can't use his full strength. In addition, The injuries from using the blood essence searching technique last time had not completely healed. If they were to join forces and deliberately target him, Xueqi looked at Yi Qianxian and said, "Master, why don't we wait for the Grand Dean of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin to come back and then use the Holy Pen to find the evil doctor?" "No need." Yi Qianxian raised his hand to stop Xueqi from speaking. Knowing that he would soon find the whereabouts of that woman, he didn't want to wait a moment longer. What's more, who knew when the Grand Dean of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin would come back? Since he had found the whereabouts of that woman, he would personally go there. He had to find out the origin of that wisp of Holy Pen spirit. Thinking of this, Yi Qianxian flicked his sleeves and stood up. "Tell Bei Qing and Feng Yu to prepare. I will go to the land beyond the clouds." "Yes." Xueqi didn't dare to say anything more. Once Master made a decision, he would never change it. But wasn't the evil doctor's influence on Master too great? If the evil doctor really didn't have Master in her heart, then what should he do? Chapter 4:12. At the same time, in the Luo family of Dongli country. After old Master Luo woke up, Luo Qingtong's heart was finally at ease. Now that grandfather Luo was safe, she could leave the Luo family and do her own thing. The things that she had taken from that expert at the peak of the martial royal realm were still in her useless ring. She wouldn't give up until she found out who the mastermind was. Luo Qingtong had a feeling that everything that happened to the Luo family and the original host had something to do with the treachery and snobbishness of the Tianyu royal family. But it was more likely to be because of the mastermind. Otherwise, the Tianyu royal family would have plenty of opportunities to attack the Luo family and the original host. The original host's mother had disappeared a long time ago. If the Tianyu royal family was so dissatisfied with the marriage that they wanted to kill the original host, they wouldn't have waited until the original host was so old. Obviously, there was an outside force involved. This made the Tianyu royal family extremely dissatisfied with the original host. Thinking of what Luo Xianning said when she attacked the original host, "You offended someone you shouldn't offend," Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold. She wanted to see how much of a threat the other party was. She wouldn't let go of anyone who harmed her. After informing grandfather Luo, Luo Qingtong left with Little Pig and Yi Qianxian. She didn't bring anyone from the Evil Valley with her. They were all left at the Luo family to guard against anyone who might attack them. Luo Qingtong felt that the Tianyu royal family couldn't even take care of themselves after the Fei family was destroyed. They wouldn't have time to make trouble for the Luo family. But there was always a chance. The Luo family and grandfather Luo were the most important and warm harbors for Luo Qingtong in both of her lives. Only in the Luo family, in front of old Master Luo, would Luo Qingtong restrain her bloodthirsty coldness and the wanton coldness in her bones and reveal the lively emotions of an ordinary girl. At this moment, she wasn't evil eye Luo Qi, but an ordinary girl, Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong liked this feeling very much. In her previous life, she had never lived such an ordinary life. He had never enjoyed such familial love between a grandfather and his grandson. She cherished all of this and would never allow anyone to destroy it. Whoever dares to touch the Luo family will die. Whoosh! Outside the Blackfield subcity of Dongli country, beside the Yellow Spring Road, Luo Qingtong landed under the watchful eyes of the crowd, and raised his hand to keep the Earth-grade flying ship. Hiss! Seeing Luo Qingtong's actions, everyone who was waiting to cross the Yellow Springs path gasped. Earth-grade flying ship. Sumeru spatial spirit artifact. These two things, no matter which one it was, were not something that an ordinary person could possess. Just where did this purple-clothed girl come from? Everyone looked at Luo Qingtong in shock. They didn't know which sacred dynasty family she came from to gain experience. Luo Qingtong swaggered into the Blackfield subcity of Dongli State. She was wearing a purple robe, and her face had already been changed by old monster Yin Qi's Cheong Qi 100 changes, so no one could recognize her. Old monster Yin Qi's Cheong Qi 100 changes was very magical. It could completely change a person's aura from the inside out, which was much more advanced than ordinary disguise techniques. Ordinary disguise techniques could at most change one's bones and appearance. If one encountered a powerful expert, they would easily be seen through. But Cheong Qi 100 changes didn't have such concerns. Even a martial emperor expert who could easily see through a person's aura with the union of heaven and man could forget about probing Luo Qingtong's real aura. If not for this, Luo Qingtong wouldn't have come to the Black Field. After all, Yi Qianxian was still looking for her everywhere. Chapter 413. Hey, have you heard? That stupid lunatic from the bloody arena is going to fight again today. Oh my god. Last time, he was carried back in a bloody mess. This time, he's going to fight again. He's not afraid of losing his life in the bloody arena one day. That's right. He's both stupid and crazy. Who would go to the bloody arena like him? He begged people to beat him. That's not enough. He even asked others to use weapons. He promised that he wouldn't fight back. Tell me, how badly is his brain injured? Isn't he just looking for death? Yeah. I heard that he's a member of the evil doctors. The people in the bloody arena are all protecting him, but they can't stop him from seeking death. I heard that last time, if the people in the bloody arena hadn't been watching him, he would have been hacked to death. It said that he was delirious when he was carried down. He even looked up and smiled at others, saying thank you. He's just too stupid. A group of people walked past Luo Qingtong. Hearing their words, Luo Qingtong suddenly froze. Are they talking about Chu Lingfeng? What's that blockhead doing now? Letting others hit him with weapons and not fighting back? Is he looking for death? Luo Qingtong was slightly angry. She rushed in the direction of the bloody arena. She promised Chu Lingfeng to go to the bloody arena to gain experience so that he could grow and advance better. She didn't want him to court death. What happened when she wasn't there? Luo Qingtong's figure quickly rushed to the bloody arena. At the same time, in the bloody arena, in the 9th arena, a man with a weapon ruthlessly attacked Chu Lingfeng, who was barehanded opposite him. The latter didn't fight back. Those knife lights hit his body, making banging sounds from time to time. It could be seen how ruthless and powerful the attacker was. Ha ha ha! Kill, kill, kill! The people in the stands screamed loudly, excited by the bloody scene in the arena. The atmosphere of the whole arena was raised to the peak. Chi! Amidst the screams of the crowd, a young man with inverted triangular eyes suddenly sneered in a corner of the stands. These are the subordinates of that evil doctor? He was really stupid enough to stand there and let others kill him. Since he wants to die so badly, we can't not fulfill his wish. It's also a good opportunity for our Chung clan to vent our anger. This young man was from the Chung clan. Previously, in order to kidnap Su Yu and torture her, not only were all the people sent by the Chung clan killed, even the Earth-level spirit ship of the eldest young master of the Cheng clan was snatched away. Everyone in the Chung clan knew about it. He happened to be passing by this place for some business. Originally, he did not want to enter this Black Field sub-city. However, when he heard about Chu Lingfeng and found out that the other party was the evil doctor subordinate, the young man immediately had evil intentions. He bribed the person who was fighting against Chu Lingfeng and wanted to kill him. Who asked this Chu Lingfeng to have a screw loose in his head? He was perfectly fine when he went up on stage to be killed, and he even promised not to fight back. Since he wasn't going to fight back, he should just die. A sinister smile appeared on the young master's face. The Chung clan couldn't touch the evil doctor and Su Yu, but this Chu Lingfeng was just right to vent their anger. Who asked him to court death? In the arena, life and death were up to fate. Even if Chu Lingfeng died, the people of the Black Field could not blame anyone else. Thinking of this, the young man smiled even more contentedly. Chapter 414. Chu Lingfeng. Luo Qingtong's brows furrowed when she saw the blockhead who was covered in blood and not fighting back. This guy was really that stupid. Was he deliberately looking for death? She let him stay in the Black Field to gain experience, and this was how he repaid her? Luo Qingtong instantly became angry. Get down from here. Her voice coldly penetrated the sharp shouts of the surrounding people, and accurately passed into Chu Lingfeng's ears. The latter was concentrating on resisting the pain in his body. The speed of the opponent's slashing was getting faster and faster, and he was somewhat powerless. But absorb a little more. Absorb a little more. This way he could become even more powerful. Only then could he help master. Chu Lingfeng thought so, enduring the severe pain in his body. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Chu Lingfeng might not be able to recognize other people's voices. But Luo Qingtong was regarded as a god by him, and he remembered her voice very clearly. In an instant, he was stunned. Master! His heart was wild with joy, and he subconsciously wanted to call out, but Luo Qingtong once again shouted. Shut up! Don't reveal my identity. Get down from there immediately. Yes, Chu Lingfeng said happily. Master was back. Even if he was scolded, he would still be very happy. What's more, Chu Lingfeng was stupid, but his intuition was very sharp. Luo Qingtong scolded him because she cared about him, and his mood suddenly became very good. I'm not coming anymore, he said loudly. His originally motionless and unresisting body suddenly retreated. The martial artist who was fighting with him saw that the situation was not good, and this fool actually wanted to run. In the past, didn't he always get carried down only when he was about to die? This time, he actually took the initiative to leave. Could it be that he realized that he had been bribed? If it was really like this, he would be dead if he stepped down. The people of the bloody arena would not let him go. Thinking of this, the weapon-wielding martial artist's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Chu Lingfeng with eyes filled with murderous intent. No matter what, he could not let this fool leave alive today. Thinking of this, the martial artist pretended to be unable to control his strength. After Chu Lingfeng opened his mouth and turned around, an attack suddenly struck towards the back of his head. Stupid lunatic! Be careful! He shouted pretentiously, but his actions were extremely ruthless. However, at this moment, an invisible force suddenly rushed before the warrior could swing his saber and blocked his saber light. It was as if the saber light had collided with the energy. In an instant, the saber light was stopped. In the next second, with a bang, Chu Lingfeng, who felt the attack from behind, suddenly turned his head and grabbed that person's neck. How dare you kill me? And in front of the master. Don't you know that your life belongs to the master? Chu Lingfeng's face was ferocious. He had always been regarded as a simple and honest fool, but now, he was like a demon from hell, and snapped his opponent's neck. Cheng! That martial artist was just about to call for help from the Cheng family's young master, but just as he shouted a word, his head was twisted off. Humph! Let's go! Seeing that the martial artist failed to kill and was killed instead, the Cheng family's young master stood up and walked out with a cold snort. An idiot! He couldn't even deal with a seriously injured fool. That Chu Lingfeng took advantage of him for nothing. Chapter 4:15. Cheng. Luo Qingtong stood in front of that Cheng family's young master as her gaze swept across this group of people and instantly guessed their identity. These people were still wearing the Cheng family's emblem on their bodies. If that practitioner hadn't asked them for help, Luo Qingtong wouldn't have known that there was someone instigating them. But since she knew, she narrowed her eyes and walked straight towards that group of people. Swish! She brushed past that young master. A whiff of fragrance was faintly discernible. That Cheng family's young master was in an extremely bad mood, and the moment he brushed past Luo Qingtong, he was about to fly into a rage. Just at this moment, he smelled that whiff of fragrance, and before he could react, his mind instantly became dizzy. Plop! That Cheng family's young master collapsed. Young master! Seeing that Cheng family's young master collapse, the bodyguards beside him instantly became flustered and hurried over to support him. However, plop plop! A series of muffled sounds rang out and their figures collapsed onto the ground one by one. In a short while, the group of people collapsed onto the ground as their bodies twitched, and not long after, they stopped breathing. Someone's dead! Someone come quickly! When the spectators by the side saw this, they hurriedly cried out. Luo Qingtong had already walked to the front of the stage and turned a deaf ear to those shouts behind her. These Cheng family members deserve to die. How dare they touch her people? On the stage, after killing that practitioner who was holding a weapon, Chu Lingfeng jumped down from the stage and didn't care about the injuries on his body as he stretched his neck to look around. Strange, where's master? Chu Lingfeng looked around and his heart was filled with unspeakable puzzlement. He had clearly heard master's voice, but why couldn't he find him? If not for Luo Qingtong's earlier warning that her identity couldn't be revealed, this big fool would have already shouted out loud. Luo Qingtong looked at his silly look and was speechless. Fortunately, although Chu Lingfeng was silly, he was absolutely obedient to Luo Qingtong's words. At this moment, no matter how much he longed to find Luo Qingtong, He didn't dare to shout out loud and could only anxiously walk around in circles and keep stamping his feet. That fiendish face of a peerless killing god was now simple and honest and impatient like a big wolfhound that couldn't find its master. Seeing him so anxious that he was sweating profusely, Luo Qingtong's lips twitched and she transmitted a message to him. Don't let anyone see that you're looking for me. I'll be waiting for you in the private room of the restaurant opposite. You'll find a way to come over and don't let anyone find you. Yes, master, I understand. When Chu Lingfeng received Luo Qingtong's message, he was so happy that the depressed expression on his face disappeared. Of the Qingtong's S. Fortunately, Chu Lingfeng was able to complete the things that she had arranged for him. He wasn't a pure fool. Otherwise, she really wouldn't dare to look for him. She would be exposed at any moment. After leaving the bloody fighting arena, Luo Qingtong went to the restaurant opposite and booked a private room. Outside the private room, she left a mark that only Chu Lingfeng could see. After waiting for about half an hour, Chu Lingfeng appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. Master. Looking at the completely unfamiliar girl in front of him, Chu Lingfeng's eyes widened in an instant. He looked at Luo Qingtong in surprise. N. Luo Qingtong left the door open for Chu Lingfeng. The latter walked in directly. Master, it's really you. When Chu Lingfeng walked in, he thought that he had recognized the wrong person. If it weren't for the mark that Luo Qingtong left outside, Chu Lingfeng would have backed out. Chapter 4:16. Master, you're so powerful. Chu Lingfeng stared at Luo Qingtong's completely unfamiliar face, feeling an indescribable novelty. Is this a mask? No. Luo Qingtong looked at his curious face and suddenly smiled. Using Qi's 100 changes, the muscles and bones on her face instantly moved and returned to their original appearance. Even his aura had changed. It's just a small trick. Luo Qingtong looked at him and said, But you, what happened to you in the bloody arena? Didn't you say you were going there to gain experience and increase your strength? I left you in the Blackfield sub-city, and you went there to die? Chu Lingfeng had a guilty conscience after hearing Luo Qingtong's words. He shrunk his neck and retorted in a low voice. Master, don't be angry, I know what I'm doing, it's okay. Such a tall and strong person, under Luo Qingtong's stare, he wished he could shrink into a ball. It really looked indescribably funny and infuriating. Luo Qingtong was not moved by his words. Why don't you tell me what you're doing? If I didn't arrive today, maybe you would have died there. You let people chop you with swords and you didn't even fight back. Do you really think you're immortal? I saved your life, so you can trample on it like this? If so, you'd better die as soon as possible. So that I won't be annoyed looking at you. Luo Qingtong's face was cold, and her words were extremely ruthless. Chu Lingfeng was such a big fool. While doing things wholeheartedly, it was easy for him to have a one-track mind. If she didn't say something ruthless to him, she was afraid that after she left, he would be like this again. This time he was lucky to be fine, but what about next time? Luo Qingtong felt that it was necessary to dispel Chu Lingfeng's foolish thoughts. Master! Hearing Luo Qingtong's words, Chu Lingfeng instantly panicked. Master, don't abandon me. I didn't do it on purpose. Master, I was wrong. Please don't abandon me. As he spoke, he began to speak intermittently. It turned out that as Chu Lingfeng's strength grew, the fights in the bloody arena could no longer satisfy him. As his strength increased, it became very difficult for him to absorb the energy of those who came to fight him. Later on, he realized that when those people attacked him with weapons, he was able to absorb a bit of energy. That was why he did this. Master, I was wrong. I just want to become stronger so that I can protect you. Master, I didn't know you would be unhappy. Chu Lingfeng hugged Luo Qingtong's thigh and cried. Master, don't abandon me. Get up first. Luo Qingtong looked at him with a headache. She didn't expect Chu Lingfeng to do this because of this. Did he want to become stronger and protect her? She looked at the wounds on Chu Lingfeng's body that had not completely healed, and her heart was slightly moved. Okay, I'm not angry anymore. Get up quickly. In any case, Chu Lingfeng's starting point was for her own good. Even if he was a little silly, Luo Qingtong would not blame him. The anger in her heart disappeared. Luo Qingtong pulled him up. Even if you want to enhance your strength, you can't let others hit you like this without fighting back. In the arena, life and death are determined by the heavens, and swords have no eyes. Let me ask you, if you were really killed in the arena, even if you have strong strength, what will you use to protect me? Luo Qingtong looked at him and said with a stern look. Chapter 4:17. Ah! Chu Lingfeng looks at her with a dumbfounded expression. Master. I didn't think so much. His face was filled with helplessness. Chu Lingfeng really didn't think so much. He just wanted to desperately increase his strength. Therefore, when those people punched and kicked him, he could absorb less power, so he wanted to let them use weapons to cut him. He didn't consider what would happen if he accidentally died on the stage. In his opinion, Master was so good to him, and also saved him and his mother. For Master, even if he died on the stage, it didn't matter. So he fought desperately to the extreme. But he didn't think that if he died on the stage, how could he repay and protect Master in the future? Thinking of this, Chu Lingfeng hangs his head with a depressed face. Master, I'm sorry. It's good that you know you're wrong. Luo Qingtong looks at him and throws a bottle of liquid medicine over. Drink this medicine. What about the medicine on your body? Luo Qingtong remembers that before she left a lot of medicine for Chu Lingfeng and the others, enough for them to use for half a year. What about the medicine? It's all used up. Chu Lingfeng whispers. Every time he went on the stage, he was almost always carried down. If it weren't for the good quality of Luo Qingtong's medicine, who knows how many times he would have died. Naturally, the medicine was used up very quickly. Luo Qingtong looks at him, the corners of her mouth twitching, and gives him a large amount of medicine again. Take these. If it's not enough, let me know. Also, Luo Qingtong taps the table with her index finger, and takes out the purple recommendation card from her waist ring. This recommendation card is for you. From tomorrow onwards, don't go to the bloody arena. Go to the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. There are many experts there. You can find someone to compare notes with. On the stage, they won't casually decide people's life and death. It's very suitable for you to increase your strength. The more this blockhead is beaten, the stronger he becomes. Luo Qingtong thought that the bloody arena was very suitable for him. Now, it seemed that he had misunderstood. In the end, the bloody arena was a place for life and death battles. Even if the people in the bloody arena wanted to watch, it was very easy for something to happen in the arena. What's more, Chu Lingfeng needed to be beaten up in order to increase his strength. This made it even easier for others to plot against him. Didn't he run into it when he came back this time? If it wasn't for this blockhead's special physique, who knows how many times he would have died. In comparison, the Sacred Institute of the Empire of Qin was different. As a student, Chu Lingfeng could find anyone to spar with, and no one would casually kill him. Luo Qingtong felt that it was very suitable for him. Luo Qingtong didn't intend to use this purple recommendation card. This time, she came to the black field to ask Chu Lingfeng to help her auction it. After all, that old man was for evil Dr. Ghost Eye. If she went to the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin with this recommendation letter, wouldn't her identity be exposed? What's more, thinking of Yu Wenma in the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. She would enter the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin as Luo Qingtong. At that time, she would ruthlessly slap Yu Wenma's face. This purple recommendation post. Whoever wants it can have it. Mistress, this is for me? Chu Lingfeng was a bit dumbfounded. He was a bit stupid, but he still knew what kind of existence the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin was. The 4 great holy dynasties. The 4 great holy academies. Their status was incomparably high. The Holy Dynasty's highest educational institution. The disciples of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin were a cut above ordinary martial artists. Who didn't know that the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin's requirements for admission were extremely harsh? If one wasn't a genius among geniuses, it was impossible to enter the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. Chapter 4:18. Chu Lingfeng foolishly looked at Luo Qingtong, not knowing how to react. Mistress, He looked at the purple recommendation card and was speechless for a long time. Purple was extremely precious. In the true Spill continent, purple represented grace, luxury, and mystery. Generally, a purple recommendation card indicated that the other party valued it. Not to mention, this purple recommendation card was even better. Chu Lingfeng was stupid, but he knew how precious this recommendation card was. And Luo Qingtong had delivered it to him. In an instant, Chu Lingfeng wanted to cry. Besides his mother, Mistress was the person who treated him the best in the world. Mistress, you can rest assured. I will definitely fight well and live up to Mistress's expectations. Chu Lingfeng choked with sobs. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. Go to the Empire of Qin's Holy Institute and fight well? If one didn't know better, they would think that she was deliberately sending someone to cause trouble. But Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. Good, fight well there. All right, there's someone called Yuan Ma. If you have nothing to do, go and find him to spar with. Luo Qingtong said with a smile on her lips. She would first find something for Yuan Mo to do. When she entered the Empire of Qin's Holy Institute, she would find him to settle accounts. Remember, you are not allowed to not fight back when you are hit or scolded. You are my subordinate. If you are hit, it is the same as hitting my face. If you do this again, you don't need to come back to see me. Do you understand? I understand. Chu Lingfeng was completely enlightened. Hitting him was the same as hitting Mistress's face. That was unacceptable. Mistress, you can rest assured. I will not lose your face. Chu Lingfeng secretly swore in his heart. When he went to the Empire of Qin's Holy Institute, he would definitely fight for Mistress. That's right, Mistress had just mentioned that Yuan Mo. He would definitely teach him a lesson. Okay. Luo Qingtong nodded with satisfaction. This was the best thing about Chu Lingfeng. Regardless of whether she was right or wrong, he would always listen to her. Being stupid had its benefits. By the way, I haven't been in the mansion recently. Did anything happen? Yes. Chu Lingfeng nodded and said to Luo Qingtong, after Mistress left, people from the Laniyue aristocratic family came to visit and sent a purple invitation card, inviting Mistress to visit the Laniyue aristocratic family. As he spoke, he took out the purple name card from his body. Before coming here, Chu Lingfeng had specially made a trip back to the mansion and brought out the purple name card. Luo Qingtong took the purple name card. At first glance, she knew what was going on. So that little fellow is a member of the Laniyue aristocratic family? As soon as the name card mentioned him, Luo Qingtong thought of the cute little boy she had saved in the 9 Magi Mountains. It seemed that he had been found by the Laniyue aristocratic family at that time and brought back safely. Okay, I see. Is there anything else? Luo Qingtong put away the name card. Yes. Chu Lingfeng nodded honestly. Many people want Mistress to refine medicine. The Bloody Arena gave me a list of the medicines they wanted to refine and the things they sent. Mistress, take a look. As he spoke, he took out the list. Although Chu Lingfeng was stupid, he still remembered Luo Qingtong's matters clearly. He had brought all of them with him on this trip. He probably knew that Luo Qingtong didn't want to reveal her identity, so he naturally wouldn't return to the mansion. Okay. Luo Qingtong nodded and took it. Chapter 419. The Imperial Family of Tianyu? Luo Qingtong's expression turned playful. She looked at the list of benefits. In order to get her to refine medicine, the Imperial Family of Tianyu had offered an extraordinary price. Not only that, the Emperor of Tianyu had also humbled himself in the letter, saying that he had already punished the 7th princess and the Empress. What happened to the Fei clan had nothing to do with the Imperial family. All of this was to get Luo Qingtong to help the martial emperors of Tianyu recover their strength. Heh! Luo Qingtong chuckled. If the Emperor of Tianyu knew that the person he was begging was the young miss of the Luo clan, whom he had always looked down on, who knew what kind of expression he would have? Apart from the Imperial family of Tianyu, I'll agree to everyone else's request. Luo Qingtong glanced at the list and threw it to Chu Lingfeng. Also, tell the people of the Bloody Arena that I won't accept any orders from the Imperial family of Tianyu no matter how high the price is. Tell them not to offer me anything. Luo Qingtong had purposely refused to accept any orders from the Imperial family of Tianyu. Furthermore, he had accepted everyone's call but not theirs. This was a clear sign of displeasure and dissatisfaction. Luo Qingtong believed that with the Emperor of Tianyu's temperament, he would definitely vent his anger on the Empress and Yuan Xue. These two had bullied the original owner and the Luo clan so badly. She wanted them to have a taste of what it was like to be bullied. Yes, master. Chu Lingfeng agreed and put away the list. With his temperament, he didn't know why Luo Qingtong had accepted everyone's orders but not the imperial family of Tianyu. In any case, she could accept anyone she wanted. No one could stop her. Master, I'll take my leave first. Chu Lingfeng said to Luo Qingtong. There's no hurry. Luo Qingtong took out the things she had put in the trash ring, the things on the peak martial emperor. Take these things to the people of the Black Field. Tell them that I need his identity urgently. It'll be even better if they can find out the faction behind him and his master. Compared to the imperial family of Tianyu, the person who had plotted against the original owner was more like a fishbone stuck in her throat. Luo Qingtong had to find out who that person was. Okay. Chu Lingfeng put the things away. Remember to tell the Black Fields people to investigate in secret. That person was against the Luo clan. Luo Qingtong didn't want others to know her relationship with the Luo clan. At least for now. She was still not strong enough. Yes. Chu Lingfeng nodded heavily. Master, I understand. I will go and tell those people in the dark domain later. Okay. Also these pills, give them to them as well. Tell them that once they find out who it is, they'll benefit from it. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she took out 5 bottles of elixirs from her trash ring. Give these 2 bottles to them and let them auction them. As for the remaining 3 bottles, keep these 2 for yourself. The last bottle is for your mother. She'll wake up after taking it. Luo Qingtong gave Chu Lingfeng the spirit strengthening pill and the spirit understanding pill. These 2 types of pills, when taken together, were extremely beneficial to the improvement of one's strength. However, taking too many of them would affect one's foundation. Luo Qingtong didn't want Chu Lingfeng to be like Luo Xinning, who only had cultivation but not much strength. Therefore, she didn't give him too many pills. These 2 bottles of pills were for him to strengthen his strength. As for the last bottle of pills, it was naturally the Yin Soul pill. Luo Qingtong made these pills especially for Chu Lingfeng's mother. Chapter 420. Master, you are so good to me. Chu Lingfeng's eyes turned red as he held the bottles of medicinal pills. Luo Qingtong quickly stopped him when she saw that he was about to cry again. All right, don't cry. Go and see your mother. By the way, you must do what I asked you to do as soon as possible. I will wait for you outside the Black Field sub-city for the next few days. Come back to me as soon as you have any news. Yes, master. Don't worry. I will do it well. Chu Lingfeng said as he walked out of the door. Luo Qingtong also left the private room a while after he left. However, she paid for this private room. When Chu Lingfeng found out the news, he would come to this private room to look for her. That way, the blockhead wouldn't be able to find her. No matter how careful he was, he would inevitably be exposed. Luo Qingtong didn't want to expose her identity to the blockhead. After leaving the Blackfield sub-city, Luo Qingtong released Little Mingzun and Little Pig from her sleeves. All right, don't be angry. I was afraid that you would cause some trouble in the Blackfield sub-city, so I locked you in my sleeves. Seeing Little Mingzun's sour face, Luo Qingtong leaned over and kissed his face. Don't be unhappy. You don't want others to see you like this, right? Luo Qingtong looked at him with a smile. Humph. Yi Qianxian snorted coldly. He didn't want to talk to her. However, Luo Qingtong wasn't the kind of person who would ignore others just because they didn't talk to her. She looked at Yi Qianxian's awkward appearance and immediately went up to him with a smile. Here, I bought you a gift. Do you like it? Luo Qingtong handed the Tonghulu skewers that she bought in the Blackfield sub-city to Yi Qianxian. She specially asked someone to make a small skewer for her. However, it was still too big in front of Yi Qianxian. That hawthorn was almost as big as Little Mingzun's head. When it was placed in front of Yi Qianxian, it looked especially cute. Yi Qianxian looked at the hawthorn skewers. Before he could say anything, Little Pig beside him had already shouted. Master, I want it too. Little Pig looked at the Tonghulu skewers with sparkling eyes. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself to others. I've been with this woman for so long, but she never bought me anything. Whenever this man came, she would buy this and that for him. Was it because his face was cuter than hers? This is a world. Just when Little Pig was making a fuss about wanting to eat, Yi Qianren snatched the hawthorn with a cold face. That pair of cold and gloomy eyes stared coldly at Little Pig. This sovereign's. He never shared his things with outsiders. Not to mention this woman gave it to him. Holy shit. Little Pig looked at him with a dumbfounded expression. Does this man need to do this? Isn't it just a Tonghulu skewers? Does he need to look at me with such a gaze as if he wants to chop me into pieces? Little Pig was speechless. Master. He looked at Luo Qingtong with tears in his eyes, trying to gain some sympathy. However, Luo Qingtong was watching Yi Qianxian eat the Tonghulu skewers with her hands supporting her forehead. She didn't even notice Little Pig. The way Little Ming Zun ate the Tonghulu skewers was too cute. Luo Qingtong watched as he hugged the round candied hawthorn and gnawed on it. His cheeks were puffed up, and her heart almost melted from his cuteness. Chapter 421. It's all right. Yi Qianxian actually didn't really like eating it. The taste was too strange. It was both sour and sweet. But since it was a gift from this woman, he would just have to put up with it. Yi Qianxian felt that it wasn't that bad after all. Is that so? Luo Qingtong supported her forehead with her hand and looked at him with a smile. In the next second, she leaned forward. I'll have a bite too. As she spoke, she took a bite of the candied haw in front of Yi Qianxian. She bit off more than half of the candied haw at the spot where he had just bitten. It's pretty good, Luo Qingtong said as she licked the candied haw at the corner of her mouth. Her smile was enchanting and wanton. Let's eat together? Yi Qianren looked at the candied hawthorn in front of her that was half bitten off and then looked at the moistness on Luo Qingtong's lips that she had just licked. Her eyes darkened. Amen. He slowly nodded and took a bite at the spot where Luo Qingtong had bitten earlier. His cold and gloomy gaze was fixed on Luo Qingtong. It was the gaze of a man looking at a woman. It was also the gaze of a hunter looking at his prey. Gloomy, fiery, and determined to win. It was just that Yi Qianren's figure was too small and too cute. Instead, it covered up the dangerous aura within. Luo Qingtong lowered her head and bit into the candied haw, so she didn't notice it. On the other hand, Little Pig caught sight of the expression in Yi Qianxian's eyes. He couldn't help but cover his eyes. Oh my god. This woman is just acting. Let's see what she'll do in the future. The two of them finished the candied haw together. Seeing that it was getting late, Luo Qingtong found a secluded place and took out the spirit boat flying ship. She brought Yi Qianren and Little Pig on board. For the next few days, she would stay near the Blackfield sub-city and wait for Chu Lingfeng to bring her news. Every day, Luo Qingtong would enter the city and sit in a private room for a while. Yi Qianxian and Little Pig stayed in the ship. Luo Qingtong knew that Yi Qianxian didn't like being locked in her sleeve, so she didn't put him inside. 3 days later, Chu Lingfeng happily brought his mother to thank Luo Qingtong. Master. My mother is well. Mother, this is Master. Chu Lingfeng excitedly introduced his mother to the two of them. The woman standing behind Chu Lingfeng was about 30 years old. She had a gentle and calm temperament and was very magnanimous. Just by standing there, she gave off an indescribable aura. Mississippi, she bowed deeply to Luo Qingtong. Thank you for saving us. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid we would have died. Feng, or wouldn't have had such a great opportunity to enter the holy court of the Empire of Qin. Thank you, miss. Luo Qingtong smiled indifferently. No need to thank me. This is what he deserves with his sincerity. Luo Qingtong didn't care who the recommendation letter was for. Since Chu Lingfeng was loyal to her, what harm was there in giving it to him? She always did things as she pleased, so she didn't need a word of thanks. As Yan Yang watched, she felt even more grateful to Luo Qingtong. Even if Feng Er followed her and recognized her as his master, as his mother, she would still be very gratified. Even if Miss says so, it doesn't change the fact that you saved us. As she spoke, she bowed deeply to Luo Qingtong. Chapter 422. Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up as she heard this. She was indeed a bit worried about the Blackfield sub-city. After Chu Lingfeng left, she didn't have anyone she could trust. It wasn't that she couldn't transfer people from the Luo family, but those people might not be familiar with the situation in the Blackfield sub-city. It would be difficult to take over. Moreover, Luo Qingtong had many people under her command, but the only ones she truly trusted were Su Yu and Chu Lingfeng. Of these two people, one had sworn an oath to never betray her. The other was loyal and pure, wholeheartedly devoted to her. Only these two people were the ones she trusted the most. Now that Yan Yang had taken over the Blackfield sub-city, it couldn't be better. Luo Qingtong could see that Yan Yang was not an ordinary person. The other party's aura was different from others. Obviously, there was a reason why they had fallen to this point. Although Luo Qingtong didn't understand Yan Yang, she understood Chu Lingfeng. The other party would never betray her. As Chu Lingfeng's mother, Yan Yang could also be trusted. Thinking this, Luo Qingtong nodded and settled this matter. With Luo Qingtong's permission, Yan Yang took over the Blackfield sub-city. She quickly handled the matter properly, and Luo Qingtong didn't have to worry about it anymore. She even handled the matter of the cooperation with the Bloody Arena very well. She had shown great skill in dealing with it. The pills given by Luo Qingtong, under her operation, set off a storm in the entire Blackfield. No one thought that evil Dr. Ghost I could actually refine pills. Even though Luo Qingtong had only refined the lowest level of elixir and had purposely lowered the retention rate of the elixir, it was already shocking enough in the eyes of everyone. In the True Spill continent, the status of alchemists was transcendent. Then the status of alchemists could only be described as rare. The alchemists of True Spill continent were all old monsters that had lived through countless years. Every one of them was immersed in the path of being an alchemist. Who knew how long it would take for them to stand out from the ranks of alchemists and be promoted to an alchemist? Even a Saint Realm expert would not be able to move these people. But now, there was an alchemist in such a small city in the Blackfield of the eastern border country. In an instant, the entire True Spill continent shook. Many forces came one after another. Luo Qingtong's medicinal pill finally sold for a sky-high price. However, the people from various forces were still unwilling to give up. They were searching for Luo Qingtong everywhere. He wanted to rope in this alchemist. However, Luo Qingtong was too good at hiding. Everyone asked around, but they didn't even know who evil Dr. Gui Tong was, where he came from, or what he looked like. Not to mention trying to win him over. The other party was backed by the Blackfield, so it was impossible for them to use force. Suddenly, everyone was burning with anxiety, looking for evil Dr. Gui Tong everywhere. Luo Qingtong's reputation as an evil doctor also rose rapidly after this auction, almost reaching the peak. For many people from large forces, they might not be able to invite an old monster-level alchemist, but they had a great chance of inviting evil Dr. Gui Tong. Naturally, they were very concerned about this. Yan Yang and the others also received a great deal of attention. At this time, Luo Qingtong was incomparably glad that she had saved Yan Yang. Otherwise, how could that big fool Chu Lingfeng deal with these matters? It would be strange if he wasn't skinned alive by those treacherous forces. Fortunately, the one in charge now was Yan Yang. Chapter 423. Great Yong Dynasty. Looking at the news that Yan Yang gave her, Luo Qingtong frowned slightly. It turned out to be someone from the Great Yong Dynasty. But the specific identity still needed to be investigated. The information from Blackfield was very vague. It was said that the other party's identity was hidden very well. They also spent a lot of effort to find out the approximate origin of the other party. It would take time to continue investigating. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. Even Blackfield couldn't find out the origin and identity of the other party in the first place. It could be assumed that the power behind the other party was not small. The background of the person behind the scenes was not simple. Sure enough, it was someone who couldn't be offended. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold. Let Blackfield continue investigating. Report to me when you get the news. Okay. Yan Yang nodded. After she left, Yi Qianming emerged from behind Luo Qingtong. If it was my people who investigated, they would have found out long ago. He looked at Luo Qingtong as he spoke. If this woman went back with him, this small matter would have been solved long ago. Don't try to fool me. Even so, I won't let you go back. Luo Qingtong pinched his little face. It didn't matter if the person behind the scenes was found out sooner or later. Anyway, she was not in a hurry to confront the other party. Let's go back. There was not much time before the opening of the Tianyu branch school. Luo Qingtong wanted to go back to the Luo family to explain everything and prepare everything. Only in this way could she leave without any worries. Luo Qingtong received a large amount of money from the elixir auction this time. After giving some to the bloody arena, Luo Qingtong still had a lot of money left. Luo Qingtong left some for Yan Yang and some for Chu Lingfeng. She also left some for Su Yu and the others. This time, she also received news from Chu Lingfeng that Su Yu had teleported back. The other party had already gained a firm foothold in the far west wilderness. It wouldn't be long before he could establish his own force. He didn't expect Su Yu to be so fast. Luo Qingtong knew that she must have suffered a lot there. It wasn't easy to make a name for oneself in a chaotic place like that. Looking at the letter sent by Su Yu, Luo Qingtong asked the people of Blackfield to help deliver a batch of medicinal liquid and medicinal pills. Luo Qingtong was not afraid that the people in the Blackfield would find out about her contact with Su Yu. She had a working relationship with Blackfield, so these things would definitely not escape Blackfield's eyes. Since that was the case, why bother to cover it up? There was nothing wrong with letting the Blackfield know. At least with them around, no one else would know. As for the matter of her developing forces in other places, Luo Qingtong believed that even if the people in the Blackfield knew about it, that high and mighty man knew about it, he would not do anything against Su Yu and the others. That man. Luo Qingtong thought about it and realized that Yi Qianxian was a person who kept a clear distinction between public and private affairs. Although he was angered to death by her every time and couldn't catch her, he had never vented his anger on Su Yu, Chu Lingfeng and the others. He had also never used the people around her to force her to show herself. This was quite rare. After all, this kind of person in a high position would vent his anger everywhere if he was unhappy. Luo Qingtong had seen a lot of this in her previous life. The ugly face of a person in a high position. In contrast, Yi Qianxian was unexpectedly clean and principled. Should she say that he was worthy of being the man she admired? Chapter 424. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong's eyes curved. She picked up little Ming Zun and kissed him on the cheek. Humph. Yi Qianxian's face darkened after being rejected by Luo Qingtong. Now that he was kissed, he was gone. Forget it. This woman is too cautious. She won't believe anything I say. She will only think that I'm trying to find an excuse to escape. I'll just wait for my main body to catch up with me. Anyway, I can't wait for too long. Yi Qianxian knew that with his ability, even if his divided soul was imprisoned by Luo Qingtong, he would still be able to find out where the Holy Pen spirit was. This woman had calculated everything, but she definitely didn't expect that the aura of the Holy Pen spirit could be found. As long as he could find out the identity of the teacher who dared to attack Luo Qingtong, then Luo Qingtong's true identity would be exposed. Thinking of this, little Ming Zun was no longer angry. Swoosh. Swoosh. On the spirit ship, Luo Qingtong was focused on carving something with a piece of wood. In front of her, there were all kinds of parts. There were all kinds of big and small parts. Luo Qingtong bought a bunch of ores and materials when she left the Blackfield city of Dongli Nation. Little Pig thought she was going to refine tools. But he didn't expect her to just sit there and start carving wood? What are you doing? Little Pig jumped in front of her curiously and used his little hoof to fiddle with the parts on the table. Why does this thing look so familiar? Where have I seen it before? Little Pig thought as he propped his little hoof up and down. On the other side, Yi Qianxian's voice sounded. Is this the weird weapon you used in the Nine Magi Mountain? Little Ming Zun walked with his hands behind his back to a part that Luo Qingtong had just finished carving. He picked it up and looked at it. Then, he looked at Luo Qingtong. When he caught Luo Qingtong in the Nine Magi Mountain, he caught the weird weapon tied to her arm. It looked like a crossbow, but it was very skillful. The mechanism inside was very complicated. It was obviously an ordinary weapon, but the power it displayed was comparable to a spiritual weapon made by an ordinary weapon refiner. Most importantly, it didn't have any cultivation restrictions. he didn't have to worry about not being able to display its full power. After Yi Qianren obtained the crossbow, he brought it back for his people to study. What surprised him was that once the crossbow was disassembled, it couldn't be put back together. At that time, several elders of the tools department had even come to find him, hoping that he could find the person who had made this crossbow. It wasn't because he couldn't find it, it was because he couldn't find it. Moreover, if he found this woman, he would run away. Until now, Yi Qianren did not have a chance to ask Luo Qingtong about the crossbow. Now she was playing with it. Yi Qianxian only needed one glance to know that it was the same as the parts that came out of the crossbow. Before he met Luo Qingtong, he never thought that weapons could be like this. Yi Qianxian's expression was a little strange. He looked at the scattered parts. Those who didn't know would never know the use of these weird things. Who would have thought that these things, which were big or small, long or short, had no purpose at all and looked like abandoned garbage, would become such amazing killing weapons after they were successfully assembled? Chapter 425. Yes, Luo Qingtong nodded, but what I'm going to make now is not the crossbow from last time. As she spoke, she raised her hand and pinched Yi Qianxian's cheek. What's that? Yi Qianxian looked at the spare parts that filled the table. In his opinion, these spare parts were no different from the spare parts of the crossbow he saw last time. Idiot, Luo Qingtong looked at him with a smile. If I use that crossbow, won't I expose myself to you? Luo Qingtong didn't believe that this man didn't take the crossbow's drawing to find someone. Therefore, even if she were to make a weapon for the Luo family, she wouldn't make a crossbow. Moreover, although the crossbow's effect was good, once a martial lord cultivator could form a protective layer of energy, the crossbow might not be able to break through. What she wanted to make was an even more ruthless weapon to be used as a trump card for the Luo family. What's that? Little Ming Zun looked at her. His big and cute phoenix eyes stared at her without blinking. This guy, how long has it been? He already knows how to use this shell to act cute. Luo Qingtong felt her heart itch from his stare. She really wanted to kiss him again. At this moment, Little Pig also remembered the scene on Nine Magi Mountain after being reminded by Yi Qianxian. He stared at the spare parts that Luo Qingtong was cutting and said with his mouth wide open, "Is this a weapon similar to the crossbow you made?" "No, it's much more powerful." "Much more powerful." Luo Qingtong looked at them and narrowed her eyes slightly. What she made on Nine Magi Mountain before was a simplified version of the Xueqi repeating crossbow, which didn't take much time. However, what she wanted to make this time was a weapon that was more complicated and lethal than the Xueqi repeating crossbow. A spear. Swish, swish, swish. Luo Qingtong finished all the spare parts while she was chatting with Yi Qianxian and the others. She quickly assembled the parts. In fact, these parts were not particularly difficult to make, but because of the high precision required, except for Luo Qingtong, who had the eye technique, no one in this different world could make such a weapon. Do you want to try? Luo Qingtong created a high-precision pocket-sized gun. When she held it in her hand, almost no one could see it. She raised her hand and aimed at Little Pig. The moment she moved, the latter felt a chill run down his spine. Without thinking, he jumped up and tried to run away. Oh my God! This woman was going to make fun of it again. However, just as it jumped up, bang bang bang, Luo Qingtong fired her gun. In the blink of an eye, Little Pig felt as if countless gusts of wind brushed past his body. In an instant, a pig-shaped silhouette formed by countless small holes appeared behind it. If Luo Qingtong wanted to attack Little Pig, all of these holes would have landed on Little Pig's body. Wah! F***ck. Little Pig fell to the ground with a thud. He looked at the pig-shaped silhouette in the air and stared blankly. Too fast. The speed was too fast. Before Little Pig could react, the bullets had already flown out. Not only that, the frequency of the shots and the strength of the attacks were too strong. Little Pig stared at the round holes on the flying ship with wide eyes. If he wasn't mistaken, Luo Qingtong didn't use any of her strength. How could she create such a powerful attack? Oh my God! It's too scary. Is this still an ordinary weapon? It's almost as powerful as a spiritual weapon. However, a spiritual weapon can only be used by a person who can use it. Chapter 426. Swoosh. Yi Qianxian also stood up from the table. That pair of large and slanted phoenix eyes stared at the circular hole that had appeared on the spaceship. His eyes were burning and shining to the extreme. How did you do it? This was clearly just an ordinary mortal weapon. Luo Qingtong smiled but didn't say anything. She couldn't explain to Yi Qianxian the so-called air principle, acceleration, and so on, so she could only remain silent. However, this gun model was very much to her liking. Based on the power of this gun, if it was made with specialized refining materials, its power should be even more powerful. Luo Qingtong made a rough estimation. Even if it was a martial lord expert, they would all die. As expected of the Terminator of the Cold Weapon era, a great killing machine. It was a pity that it relied too much on bullets. Once it ran out of bullets, it would be useless. It would be great if this problem could be solved. While Luo Qingtong was pondering, Little Pig was already squealing when he saw the round holes made by the bullets. Oh my God, if this was made with spiritual energy, I wouldn't even know how I died. Her speed and strength were too strong. This was just an ordinary mortal weapon. If she used her strength, wouldn't she be able to use the least amount of strength to achieve the greatest lethality? A low-level martial artist could also instantly kill a high-level martial artist? This was simply too terrifying. This completely subverted the rules of refining. He didn't know how this woman's brain worked. She was actually able to create such a terrifying killing machine. If those refiners knew about this, they would probably go crazy. Little Pig's words instantly reminded Luo Qingtong of something. If all these bullets were turned into spiritual energy, then, was it possible to create an energy-gathering array on the gun and use the martial artist's strength to activate this array to absorb the spiritual energy from the outside world and turn it into spiritual energy bullets? But how should she do it? The volume of an array was too large. It was impossible to condense it on the gun. Moreover, it was impossible for a spiritual array and a weapon to be perfectly integrated. Suddenly, Luo Qingtong thought of something. Inscription. Luo Qingtong immediately thought of the inscription pattern that Little Pig had told her before. If it was an inscription pattern, wouldn't it be possible to realize her idea? If she could really create something that could convert spiritual energy on the gun, it could replace bullets. Then, the gun she created would become a terrifying killing machine in this strange world. As long as she activated the inscription pattern on the gun, she could obtain an endless supply of spiritual energy bullets. Not only that, with the inscription pattern technique, she might even be able to create interstellar weapons that only existed in the 24th century. And let them exist in this strange world in a different way. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong laughed. Humph, you've helped me a lot this time. After she finished speaking, she went to research the inscription pattern. Without an introductory manual, he couldn't learn it? Dawn. Is. However, when Luo Qingtong really did it, she realized that imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. The inscription pattern on the life and death yin-yang sword was broken in half. Luo Qingtong heard from Tian Mingzi that the inscription pattern was not completed. She thought that the front part was finished and only the second half was left. Who would have thought that the inscription pattern was broken in half? Luo Qingtong looked at the half-completed inscription pattern and felt a headache. Chapter 427. This sovereign has an inscription tool. He looked at Luo Qingtong. You can comprehend it however you want. As long as I go back with you, right? Luo Qingtong continued his words and pinched his rosy cheeks. Don't even think about it. I'll think of another way myself. By the way, where's Ji? Luo Qingtong looked around and found that Little Pig was nowhere to be seen. That guy, where did he run off to? I don't know, Yi Qianxian coldly snorted when he heard Luo Qingtong mention Little Pig. His voice was even colder than before. He looked at Luo Qingtong's rosy lips and suddenly reached out his hand to fiercely rub them a few times. Then, he left with a cold face. At the same time, outside the airship, Little Pig's round belly was tied with a rope. He was being used as a kite. Ah! Little Pig was swinging back and forth behind the airship with the wind. Tears were streaming down his cheeks. Oh my God! That man is jealous. Shouldn't he be looking for trouble with that woman? Why am I the one being taught a lesson instead? There's no justice in this world. Ah! A strong gust of wind blew. Little Pig's chubby body was swung back and forth along with his miserable shrieks. He was only put down when they were about to reach the Luo family. After that, Little Pig became well-behaved and was determined to keep a distance from Luo Qingtong. Damn, that man is too scary when he's jealous. Most importantly, he was the one being taught a lesson. Luo Qingtong didn't notice this. During this period of time, she was busy making guns for the Luo family. As for Little Pig, she thought that it had gone to sleep. The poor Little Pig's calves were swaying from the wind, but no one knew about it. "Grandpa, these are for you." After returning to the Luo family, the first thing Luo Qingtong did was to give the guns she made to Grandfather Luo. The Luo family's iron soldiers were currently recuperating, so they could practice their spear techniques. Once they were proficient in using these spear techniques, the Luo family wouldn't be bullied even if their strength couldn't increase in a short time. At first, Old Master Luo didn't know what they were. When Luo Qingtong demonstrated the power of these guns to him, he was shocked and hurriedly protected these guns as if they were treasures. Luo Qingtong found it funny to see him like this. "Grandpa, I'll leave these guns to you. Please distribute them to the Luo clan's Iron Army. I've already written down the specific training methods. When the time comes, you just have to follow the instructions and train them." Luo Qingtong explained the taboos and techniques of these guns to Luo's grandfather. Mr. Luo listened carefully. Under the guidance of Luo Qingtong, he fired a shot and instantly fell in love with this unprecedented weapon. The grandfather and grandson spent the whole day in the yard. Grandfather Luo finally mastered some shooting techniques, and he didn't miss any shots. For 3 whole days, Luo Qingtong stayed in the Luo family. If she wasn't making bullets, she was explaining the gun techniques and assembly methods to Grandfather Luo. It was as if Old Master Luo had obtained a new toy. He took apart and reassembled the gun that Luo Qingtong had given him. He was amazed by all sorts of things. In his opinion, this weapon made by Luo Qingtong was too stealthy. It didn't have any energy fluctuations and didn't need to be powered. It was powerful and fast. It was really a killer weapon. Such a weapon was actually made by his granddaughter. Grandfather Luo was very proud of it. If it weren't for the fact that this weapon was the Luo family's killer weapon and couldn't be easily exposed, he would have already taken it out to show off and let everyone see how powerful his granddaughter was. Chapter 428. Luo Qingtong didn't stay in the Luo family for long. After dealing with the matters of the Luo family, she left with Yi Qianxian and Little Pig. This time, she didn't take the flying boat but left it in the Luo family. This way, if something happened, the Luo family could find her as soon as possible. Moreover, she didn't have much use for the flying boat in the Tianyu Branch Academy. Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian, and Little Pig hurried all the way and soon arrived at the imperial capital of the Tianyu Empire. The entire imperial capital was unusually lively these days. After the end of the enrollment season, students from various countries under the jurisdiction of the Tianyu Empire began to come to the Tianyu Branch Academy to register. On the streets, there were all kinds of young men and women coming and going. Luo Qingtong wasn't in a hurry to enter the Tianyu Branch Academy. There were still 2 days before the public registration day, so it was useless to go there early. At that time, she would have to make a trip there again. She rented a room in the most expensive inn in the imperial capital and put Yi Qianxian and Little Pig inside. Then, she set up layers of formations to prevent Yi Qianxian from going out, and also to prevent people from accidentally breaking in and harming them. Only then did she leave in disguise. The Lanyue family. Luo Qingtong hid in an alley not far from the entrance of the Lanyue family. Her lips twitched as she looked at the densely packed people hiding around the Lanyue family. Needless to say, these people were definitely sent by that man to hide here and keep an eye on her. In order to catch her, that man really didn't let go of any possible place. Luo Qingtong looked at the purple invitation in her hand and was speechless. Forget it, if she really went there with this invitation, she was afraid that before she could reach the entrance of the Lanyue aristocratic family, she would be snatched away by the man who was keeping watch outside the door. She had to find a way to get in. For Luo Qingtong, as long as she could smoothly enter the Lanyue family, she could easily detoxify the poison and leave. After all, the poison wasn't particularly difficult to detoxify for her. As for the follow-up treatment, the Lanyue family had a lot of resources, so there was no need to worry about not being able to nurse the little boy back to health. She just had to remove the poison and leave. With this in mind, Luo Qingtong stayed there, waiting for an opportunity. Wave after wave of people who had set up defenses and were keeping an eye on them left. At this moment, clatter clatter clatter. A horse carriage was approaching from afar. Luo Qingtong looked at the luxurious carriage. When she saw the engraved emblem of the Lanue family, her eyes suddenly lit up. If he did, he would use the other party's carriage as a cover to enter. Luo Qingtong carefully observed and discovered that the coachman driving the carriage was surprisingly a guard of the Lanue aristocratic family. The person sitting inside must be a direct descendant of the Lanue family. He had the purple invitation card from the Lanue family. As long as he took it out, they should cooperate with him. With this thought in mind, Luo Qingtong's eyes turned. She bent down to pick up a stone and pinched it in her hand. When the carriage passed by the alley, Luo Qingtong raised her hand. With a whoosh, the stone happened to be stuck in front of the left front wheel of the carriage. With a bang, the carriage suddenly jolted. The curtains hanging on the carriage were raised, and the 8 treasure bells jingled. In just an instant, the carriage suddenly tilted toward the alley. The angle of the tilt wasn't too big, but with the cover of the raised curtains, Luo Qingtong's figure suddenly swept up like a ghost. With a whoosh, she disappeared into the carriage. Chapter 429. Boom! An incomparably vast and powerful aura suddenly blasted out of the carriage. Sword essence! She sensed the fierce and brazen aura of the attack that seemed to be able to cut through everything. Luo Qingtong's pupils shrank slightly. It was actually a sword essence attack. The so-called sword essence was the fusion of a martial artist's cultivation with his own swordsmanship when he cultivated to the extreme. The sword was in him, and the sword was in him. At such a realm, the opponent's every move, even the slightest thought, carried a majestic and fierce sword chi, which was comparable to a martial emperor expert who had achieved oneness of heaven and man. The person sitting in the carriage was actually such a person. Could it be that she had accidentally run into the carriage of the master of the Lanue family? But this carriage clearly did not belong to the master. Luo Qingtong should have recognized it. Could it be that the master of the Lanue family had a sudden inspiration today and sat in the carriage of a junior? Luo Qingtong's thoughts raced, but her body did not stop at all. Swish! The red light in her eyes intensified. In an instant, she saw through the weakness of the opponent's sword essence attack. Her body twisted like a snake. Luo Qingtong's body seemed to be soft and boneless. In an instant, she passed through the weakness of the sword essence attack. With a boom, the attack passed through the place where Luo Qingtong had been standing, through the flying carriage curtain, and heavily smashed not far behind the carriage. Young master! Luo Qingtong heard the guard outside anxiously call out. Young master? Luo Qingtong raised her eyes slightly. She had already rushed in front of the guard. The purple invitation in her hand was infused with energy and became as hard as steel, pressing against a certain part of the guard's ribs. Don't move, Luo Qingtong said indifferently with narrowed eyes. I mean you no harm. The aura on this purple invitation is very obvious. It belongs to the Lanue family. You should be able to sense it. Your visit is very special. The sound that entered his ears was clear and sonorous, like the sound of jade and metal striking each other. It was very pleasing to the ear. Luo Qingtong looked up and saw a handsome young man sitting in front of her. The man wore a purple jade gold crown on his head. His face was like jade, as if it had been cut and polished. He looked like a bandit gentleman. However, the aura around his body was piercingly cold and sharp, like an unsheathed sword, diluting the aura of a jade-like gentleman. Young master, are you all right? The guard driving the carriage hurriedly asked. I'm fine. Yan Yuju's voice was indifferent. While Luo Qingtong was sizing him up, he was also sizing up the girl in front of him. It was really surprising that his opponent had easily dodged his sword-intent attack. This was the first time Yan Yuju had failed against a martial artist whose strength was lower than hers. Sword intent was originally an extremely domineering attack. Yet now, his sword intent had been dodged. And at close range, when the other party was completely unguarded, Yan Yuju looked at the purple invitation that Luo Qingtong pressed against her ribs and said indifferently, You have my Lanue family's highest invitation, so you can enter directly. You don't need to use this small path. Is that so? Luo Qingtong looked at her and smiled lazily. I also want to. Unfortunately, I have an enemy here, so I can't show myself in the open. So, young Master Lan Yue, I'll have to trouble you. Luo Qingtong said that she was being held hostage in an open and honorable manner. It couldn't be helped. Who would be willing to sneak in like a thief when they had an honored guest? Wasn't she being forced by that man, Yi Chenxian? Chapter 430. A voice suddenly came from outside. Brother Ju, why did your carriage suddenly stop here? What was with the attack just now? Are you okay? Outside the carriage, Yu Wenxue stood there with a happy face. Although she was saying words of concern, her gaze was completely different from what she was thinking. With Brother Ju's strength, how could something happen to him in the Tianyu Empire? Yu Wenxue was just taking advantage of this opportunity to talk to Yan Yu Ju. As the most pampered princess of the Tianyu Empire, Yu Wenxue naturally knew Yan Yu Ju's identity. This young master of the Yan Yu family, who almost no outsiders knew, was the reason why the family was prosperous and no one dared to provoke them. Although the Yan Yu family had settled down in the Tianyu Empire, even the great families of the sacred dynasty had to be wary of the other party's background. And all of this was because of Yan Yu Ju. Yu Wenxue had been warned from a young age not to cause trouble for the Yan Yu family. In the Tianyu Empire, she could provoke anyone but the Yan Yu family. Especially Yan Yu Ju. In the past, Yu Wenxue didn't understand why Yan Yu Ju was far superior to her royal brother Yu Wenma in terms of talent and strength. But the one who was called the #1 genius of the Tianyu Empire was Yu Wenma. Later she found out that it was because Yan Yu Ju was from a different world from them from the beginning. The title of the #1 genius of the Tianyu Empire was not worth mentioning to the other party. Now that Yan Yu Ju's carriage had an accident, Yu Wenxue was naturally happy. This was a great opportunity to get closer to the other party. One had to know that she almost never saw Yan Yu Ju. Even when she occasionally heard that the other party had returned, the latter would quickly leave. She almost never had a chance to see her. Now that she saw Yan Yu Ju's carriage stop here, she said as she lifted the curtain of Yan Yu Ju's carriage. Luo Qingtong was just thinking that the voice outside was familiar when she suddenly saw the curtain being lifted. Her eyes instantly turned cold and she subconsciously leaned in front of Yan Yu Ju. At the same time, she tugged at the blue and white moon robe that the other party was wearing. It covered half of her body and even blocked the purple invitation card that was filled with energy and was pressed against the other party like steel. Big Brother Ju. Yu Wenshue's face was filled with joy as she lifted the curtain. She had just called out shyly when her expression instantly changed. Who are you? She shrieked. Why are you in Brother Ju's carriage? Yu Wenxue looked at the scene in front of her with an ugly expression. Luo Qingtong just happened to be leaning on Yan Yu Ju's knee. From Yu Wenshue's point of view, it looked like Luo Qingtong was half lying on Yan Yu Tian's leg. The young girl's body was covered by a man's robe, covering half of her body. Because Luo Qingtong was in a hurry, the front of Yan Yu Ju's inner robe was pulled open a little, revealing the exquisite white collarbone and slightly exposed chest. And because Luo Qingtong's right hand was holding that purple invitation card that was filled with energy, it was sinking into the blue and white moon robe. In Yu Wenshue's eyes, the other party was shamelessly seducing Yan Yu Ju. Her hand was already inside the robe, and she didn't know what she was doing. Instantly, Yu Wenshue's eyes turned red with anger. Slut! She raised her hand and slapped Luo Qingtong. Chapter 431. However, Yu Wenxue didn't even have time to slap her. Luo Qingtong, who was bent over and looked like she was lying on Yan Yuejue's lap, had a sharp look in her eyes. She hadn't even caused trouble for Yu Wenxue, and this woman had already come knocking on her door. She wanted to slap her? Seeing Yu Wenshue's slap, Luo Qingtong suddenly sneered. She pressed down on the purple invitation card under Yan Yuejue's ribs, warning her not to meddle in other people's business. She quickly raised her other hand. Slap! Luo Qingtong's palm blocked in midair and pushed aside Yu Wenshue's hand. Then she slapped Yu Wenshue's face. Not only that, Luo Qingtong raised her leg and kicked Yu Wenxue in the stomach, sending her flying. Bang! Yu Wenxue didn't even have time to react before she was sent flying by Luo Qingtong's kick. Ah! She fell to the ground and curled up like a shrimp. She was in so much pain that her face was contorted. You actually dare to hit me? Yu Wenxue looked at Luo Qingtong in disbelief. She actually dared to hit her. She actually dared to hit her. Yu Wenxue had always been domineering in Tianyu Imperial City. She was the only daughter of Tianyu Empress and Yu Wenma's younger sister. She had always been the one to hit others. No one had ever hit her. But now she was being hit. And it was a slut who seduced the man she liked. Brother Ju. She lay on the ground and looked at Yan Yuejue in the carriage with teary eyes. She hoped that he could speak up for her and teach the person who dared to hit her a lesson. However, Yan Yuejue only glanced at her indifferently. Luo Qingtong wiped her hands and looked at her. Seventh princess, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't lift someone else's curtains. Otherwise, it won't be as simple as hitting you next time. If this wasn't the wrong place and the wrong time, she would have killed Yu Wenxue long ago. Yu Wenshue's eyes were filled with hatred. She lay on the ground with pain and humiliation in her heart. As a pampered princess, when had she ever been treated like this? However, she didn't even have a chance to act up. Yan Yuejue was protecting this woman. This realization made Yu Wenshue's lips to bleed. With her here, she couldn't do anything to this audacious woman. She was clearly the most pampered princess of Tianyu's empire. Now, this woman had hit him, and he couldn't do anything to her. Yu Wenshue's heart's heart. Brother Ju. She called out pitifully again. However, there wasn't any sound to Esientes to the end. She's Tts. S still have self-respect twos. She's to these. To sesses hers from the carriage. Seeing Yu Wenxue run away crying, Yan Yuju's expression was indifferent. She looked at Luo Qingtong beside her. Oh. She wanted to hit, so she hit. What, do you want to stand up for her? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows at her. She didn't say anything just now. Wasn't it too late to stand up now? But if the other party really opened her mouth, Luo Qingtong felt that it was necessary for her to return home. She never helped her enemies. Even if the other party only spoke up for Yu Wenxue. But, if she wasn't happy, who could do anything to her? Chapter 432. I don't know her well. Yan Yuejue cut off his relationship with Yu Wenxue with one sentence. He'd left home at a young age and barely knew Yu Wenxue. How could he stand out for her? He just felt that with her status, there was no need to bicker with Yu Wenxue. After all, she was an honored guest of the house of Yan Yuejue. But since she liked it, then so be it. Is that so? That's for the best. Luo Qingtong looked at him with a meaningful smile. I have a grudge with Tianyu's imperial family. It's best if your house of Yan Yuejue doesn't get involved. Given the grudge between the Luo family and Tianyu's imperial family, as well as the fact that Tianyu's imperial family wouldn't break off the engagement no matter what, she and Tianyu's imperial family would have to fight sooner or later. Since she'd already destroyed the Fei family, Luo Qingtong didn't mind spending a bit more time to destroy Tianyu's imperial family. Hearing the coldness in her words, Yan Yuejue glanced at her and nodded. House of Yan Yuejue won't interfere in this matter. Since she was an honored guest of the house of Yan Yuejue, they naturally sided with Luo Qingtong. Tianyu's imperial family was nothing to him. Even if the empire suddenly turned upside down, it had nothing to do with house of Yan Yuejue. Very good. Luo Qingtong looked at him and smiled. She looked the man up and down and said, Since you just made a promise, I can give you some advice. There's a problem with the sword art you're cultivating. Although it has miraculous effects on sword intent, the drawbacks are too obvious. As she spoke, she narrowed her eyes and said, If I'm not wrong, what you're cultivating should be the only copy of a sword technique. Although it's powerful, it's incomplete. As she spoke, she met the man's sharp gaze and smiled leisurely. Don't look at me like that. Even if I investigated you in advance, who else would know about such a secret except for you? Luo Qingtong leaned against the wall of the carriage. I'm saying this because I can see the hidden danger in your body. As Luo Qingtong spoke, her gaze lingered on the man. At this time, Yan Yuju had already put on her outer robe again. The young master who was as light as jade had a body full of sharp and unhindered sword qi. Her posture was tall and straight, like jade and bamboo. His aura had almost completely merged with the sword qi. He was only one step away from being able to completely restrain himself. At that time, his sword Dao would reach the great accomplishment stage, and his sword will would be able to transform into a physical entity, truly entering the realm of man and sword as one. If you don't want your sword Dao to remain stagnant after mastering it, you should avoid the 4 left and 3 right spots below your ribs when you fuse your sword qi and sword intent. Instead, you should go to the front 8 and the left 7. Luo Qingtong said. She leaned against the wall of the carriage and closed her eyes to rest. She had already said what she needed to say. It was up to him whether he listened or not. She was not some kind of compassionate saint who would cry and shout for help when she saw a problem with a person's cultivation method. If Yan Yuju hadn't made a promise on behalf of the Yan Yu aristocratic family that they wouldn't care about the Qianyu imperial family, she wouldn't have mentioned this to him. I'll remember Mrs. Words. In the carriage, Yan Yuju's voice slowly sounded. It was very cautious. Other than him, no one knew the origin of his sword art. Luo Qingtong easily pointed out the drawbacks. He had no choice but to believe it. Chapter 433. The carriage swayed as it sped into the Lanyue family residence. The gatekeeper recognized that this was the young master's carriage and hurriedly went in to call someone out to greet them. But he was stopped by Lanyue Ju. I'll give you an hour. Luo Qingtong looked at him. I'll leave in an hour. You can make the arrangements yourselves. Luo Qingtong had taken a great risk in coming to the Lanyue family residence. If it weren't for the promise she made at 9 Shaman Mountain and that little boy wasn't annoying, she wouldn't have made this trip. Therefore, she absolutely wouldn't stay here for long. Half an hour was already her bottom line. Lanyue Ju nodded and immediately went to make the arrangements without saying anything. He had just returned to the Lanyue family residence and didn't know what had happened. It wasn't until he found Lanyue Ju that he learned the ins and outs of the matter. In other words, she cured little cousin and relieved the poison in his body? He looked at the old man. Yes. Lanyue Ju said with a solemn expression. It's not just relieved. Little Lucky's poison is almost completely cured. Although the poison still remains in his body, it has no effect on him. He can even practice martial arts now. It's just that the isolation of the poison requires us to continuously inject power into it to maintain it. That's why I invited this evil doctor with the highest form of visiting card. Lanyue Ju said, you also know how complicated and difficult the poison in Little Lucky's body is. After so many years, we've almost given up. Even the medical expert that your master invited said that his poison could be cured but not without damaging the foundation. But now, there's no problem with Little Lucky's body. This evil doctor's medical skills are unfathomable. Moreover, she's also an alchemist. Speaking of this, Lanyue Ju was incomparably glad that he had made a prompt decision at that time. If he hadn't sent a purple-level visiting card to Luo Qingtong early, she might not have come to their Lanyue family residence. After all, the current evil doctor was a hot commodity in the entire True Spill continent. A newly born alchemist. And she wasn't an old monster with years of experience. Who knew how many great families and powers wanted to befriend her? It was their fortune that the Lanyue family was able to invite him. Yan Yaya nodded, thinking of the advice the other party had given her on the carriage. His medical skills were truly unfathomable. Then grandfather quickly arranged for her to meet with Little Lucky. Yan Yuju told him about Luo Qingtong's matter. When he heard that Luo Qingtong had to hide from her enemies, that she couldn't show herself openly, and that she would leave in an hour, Master Lanyue's jaw almost dropped. Enemies? Are you kidding me? With his background in the Black Field and his current reputation, how could anyone find trouble with the evil doctor? Old Master Lanyue was well informed. He knew that after evil Dr. Gue Tong destroyed the Fei clan, other than himself, Blackfield had also issued a warning to the Qianyu royal family, telling them not to touch evil Dr. Gue Tong. The wording was extremely harsh, and it was said that it came from the main city. With such protection, there was actually someone who could force the evil physician to hide everywhere? Could it be that it was related to that? That's right, the evil doctor's ability was so outstanding. It was likely that the people above had appeared in front of them for some reason, right? Thinking of this, Master Lanyue felt a chill in his heart. He hurriedly made sure that no information about the evil doctor was leaked. Otherwise, even their Lanue family residents wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Luo Qingtong didn't know that Master Lanue's imagination had already gone to the ends of the earth. She was currently in Yen Yuju's room, flipping through the books that Yen Yuju gave her to pass the time. Chapter 434. Oh! Luo Qingtong looked at the handwritten book that was sandwiched between the pile of books. When her eyes swept over it, she suddenly froze. This is... Luo Qingtong picked out the handwritten book from the pile. Inscription pattern explanation? Luo Qingtong looked at the handwritten book. The handwriting was very clear. Especially the word, inscription. This was a book that talked about inscription patterns? Luo Qingtong's eyes instantly lit up. It wasn't that she didn't ask Yen Yang and the others to help her collect inscription pattern books. But inscription patterns were incomparably profound. In the true Spill continent, there were no records related to inscription patterns. Even inscription pattern engraved tools were very rare. Thinking about it, in the true Spill continent, where even refining pills was highly revered, the inscription technique was likely an extinct existence. Even inscription tools were extremely rare. Besides Luo Qingtong's life and death yin yang sword, Luo Qingtong had only heard about inscription tools from Yi Chenxian. Before she came to the Sky Universe branch, she had already contacted Yen Yang and the others through a special method. She had asked them to help her collect inscription tools in the Black Field. She had expressed her willingness to use the opportunity to help her refine pills in exchange. However, until now, there was still no news. With the Blackfield's ability to spread news, in addition to her great reputation, if there really was someone who had an inscription tool, there would be someone who would be willing to take it out and give it a try. But in these past few days, there was no news at all. If it wasn't that there were no inscription tools here, then it was that they were very rare. They were so rare that they only existed in the hands of old monsters and superpowers. But the other party didn't have any intention of taking it out to exchange. Luo Qingtong frowned. She was prepared to change the condition to a rental if she still couldn't get an inscription tool. But then she found the inscription pattern explanation here. Although the content was a little messy, it made people feel a little confused. But Luo Qingtong could see that the other party was seriously studying inscription patterns. In the true Spill continent, there was someone who was studying inscription patterns? And from the looks of it, he had already figured out something? Luo Qingtong looked at the book of inscriptions. What was written on it was some of the other party's views on inscription patterns. It was similar to reading notes. There were more personal thoughts and opinions, but less about inscription patterns. But since there were such notes, it meant that the other party must have a lot of knowledge about inscriptions. Even if it was the most superficial, it would be fine. What Luo Qingtong lacked the most now was entry level. As long as she could learn the basics, with her ability, there would be no more obstacles on the path of inscription. Luo Qingtong thought and put the handwritten copy aside. He was prepared to ask Yen Yuju after this matter was over, hoping to find the owner of this handwritten copy. Right at this moment, Fairy Sister. A figure rushed in from outside the door and threw himself into Luo Qingtong's arms. Luo Qingtong didn't know what was going on, but she was embraced by someone. This child was still so passionate and unguarded. But before he threw himself at her, shouldn't he look at her face first? Did he throw himself at the wrong person? Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. Young master, you've got the wrong person. This little guy had seen her face. Luo Qingtong didn't intend to reveal her identity. I am evil Dr. Ghost Eye, not some fairy sister. Luo Qingtong didn't want to complain about this title. Little fairy or whatever. This kind of description was really too far away from her. Chapter 435. That's impossible. The little Shota looked up at her. Fairy sister, I recognize you. It's you. As he spoke, his eyes flickered, as if he was asking for praise. Fairy sister, you're playing hide and seek with me, right? As he spoke, he raised an incomparably cute smile. Fairy sister, you can't hide from me. Let me tell you a secret. Since young, Xueqi has a special ability to recognize people. No matter how fairy sister changes her appearance, I'll be able to recognize you immediately. These words were whispered in Luo Qingtong's ear. Damn! Luo Qingtong looked at Yan Yuju, who had already walked to the door and was about to enter. She immediately raised her hand and struck out, closing the door in an instant. You said that no matter what I change into, you'll be able to recognize me? Luo Qingtong looked at the little boy in front of her seriously. The latter still looked the same as when he was in Nine Magi Mountain, but he looked a lot more cheerful. At this moment, when he met Luo Qingtong's serious gaze, the little boy was clearly a little nervous. Then, he bit his lip and nodded. Fairy sister, did I do something wrong? The little boy was very uneasy. He had just seen Luo Qingtong's expression change. Could it be that Fairy sister didn't want to recognize him? But he had always missed Fairy sister. Even in his dreams, he wanted to find Fairy sister. Only by staying by her side could he find an unprecedented sense of security. The little boy already knew that the poison in his body was cured. Not only the python poison in Nine Magi Mountain, but the poison that had been tormenting him for a long time was also cured. He could practice martial arts and no longer need to be called a good-for-nothing by others. No one could be respectful to him in front of others, but call him a good-for-nothing behind his back. The little boy knew that all of this was brought about by Luo Qingtong. She had even disregarded the danger and came to cure him. Xueqi had just heard from his grandfather that the evil Dr. Gui Tong had avoided his enemies and came to cure him of the poison. He had told him not to reveal her identity outside. The little boy silently remembered these words in his heart and swore that he would not let Fairy Sister encounter any danger. Just now, Fairy Sister's expression changed so much. Was it because he called out her identity? With that thought in mind, the little fellow said seriously, Fairy sister, don't worry. I didn't tell Grandpa and the others about your identity. They don't know that you are Fairy sister. The little boy was well aware of his situation. He knew how many people wanted him dead. Because he didn't want to be a burden to Luo Qingtong, he kept his mouth shut about Luo Qingtong ever since he came back. If he hadn't seen Luo Qingtong and been too excited, he wouldn't have suddenly called out her name. I'm fine. Luo Qingtong looked at the pure and lovely little boy in front of her, and her face was indescribably tangled. She didn't care that the little Shota had exposed her identity. So what if others knew that the evil Dr. Ghost Eye was the fairy sister who had saved him? It wasn't like Yi Qianxian hadn't seen her real appearance before. What really made Luo Qingtong's expression change was the little boy's ability to recognize her at a glance no matter what she looked like. In this way, her identity as Luo Qingtong could no longer be hidden. Thinking about how the other party could recognize her at a glance and call out her identity when she was Luo Qingtong frowned. Chapter 436. Xueqi, there's something I want to tell you. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she activated the Qiongqi's 100 transformations and returned to her original appearance. When you see me like this, you can't let others know that I'm the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, understand? Okay. The little boy nodded obediently. He vaguely sensed that Luo Qingtong was doing this because of the enemy his grandfather had mentioned. Fairy sister, don't worry. He nodded seriously and said, I won't let others know that you're the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. When we're in public, I'll take care to keep a distance from this identity of yours. The little boy's senses were very sharp. He could sense that Luo Qingtong wanted him to keep it a secret only because of this identity. Other times, it didn't matter. Good boy, Xueqi. Luo Qingtong indeed meant this. She didn't expect the little boy to understand so quickly. It seemed that he was a child from a large family. Although his mind was pure and kind, he still had quite a bit of intelligence. In fact, Luo Qingtong had many methods to prevent the little boy from revealing her identity to prevent future trouble. But looking at the young man's eyes that were filled with pure trust in her, she couldn't bring herself to use those methods. Especially since the other party had been hiding her identity as fairy sister ever since they returned from Nine Magi Mountain. Luo Qingtong felt that she should be able to trust this little boy. Receiving Luo Qingtong's praise, the little boy was very happy and looked at Luo Qingtong with a gaze full of admiration. Fairy sister, your eyes are fine. They're especially beautiful. He looked at Luo Qingtong's eyes and said happily, Is that so? Thank you. Xueqi's body is also very good. Luo Qingtong didn't need to take the little boy's pulse to see that the aura in his body was very strong. Come here, I'll completely detoxify you. It could be seen that the people of the Lanyue family loved Xueqi very much. Luo Qingtong found a large amount of thick aura in his body, which wrapped and isolated the toxins very well. Clearly, the people of the Lanyue aristocratic family would inject little Lucky with their aura every day to ensure that his poison would not spread. If he didn't truly love her, he wouldn't have done it so meticulously. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and injected her aura into the little boy's body. "Bear with it," she said to the little fellow lying on the bed. The latter had already taken off his clothes and was biting a small wooden stick in his mouth. When he heard Luo Qingtong's words, he nodded heavily. The little fellow knew that as long as the poison in his body was completely removed, he would be able to get rid of his previous life. He could do it. Immortal sister, just do it. I'm not afraid of pain. Every time the toxins in his body were touched by someone, he would feel so much pain that he would rather die than live. The little boy was already used to it. When Luo Qingtong heard this, she recalled how the little fellow had blocked the giant python's bite for her on the 9 Magi Mountains. He hadn't even cried out in pain. The little young master who grew up in an extravagant family had such a high tolerance for pain. It wasn't because he was strong enough, but because he had suffered too much. The person who had poisoned him was too vicious. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold and she began to guide the toxins to seep out of his body. With her eye technique, Luo Qingtong effortlessly forced the poison out of the little fellow's body. Chapter 437. Demonic Doctor. Seeing her come out, Master Yan Yu stood up with a whoosh. In the hall outside, there was only him, Yan Yu Ju, and 1 or 2 trusted aides. It was extremely secretive. "Demonic Doctor, how is my grandson?" Master Yan Yu asked impatiently. "He's fine. The poison has been forced out. There won't be any problems in the future," Luo Qingtong said, looking at him and taking out the handwritten copy she had seen before. "Old Master Lanyue, I would like to ask, where did you get this handwritten copy?" "Handwritten copy?" Master Yan Yu was very happy now. He followed Luo Qingtong's hand and looked at the handwritten copy in her hand with an indescribable puzzlement. "What handwritten copy? What is this?" "I just found this when I was flipping through the books in my room. I thought it was quite interesting, so I wanted to ask," Luo Qingtong said lightly. "I don't know if Master knows who wrote this handwritten copy?" "A handwritten copy found in the room?" Master Yan Yu was puzzled. He asked Luo Qingtong where the handwritten copy was placed and where it was mixed with the other books. Then with an he raised his hand and slapped his head. "Look at me. How could I forget this?" He said to Luo Qingtong, "Demonic Doctor, please don't blame me. I just didn't remember. This handwritten copy belongs to an old friend of mine. I think I accidentally brought this handwritten copy when I asked to borrow books from him." He hurriedly said to his trusted aide, "Quick, go to Master Shu's house and ask him about the origin of this handwritten copy." That trusted aide deftly responded and quickly left. Luo Qingtong saw that there was still an hour left, so she wasn't in a hurry to leave. She just waited here for the results. That trusted aide of the Yan Yu family was very fast. Luo Qingtong only waited for half a quarter of an hour before the other party ran back, panting. Reporting to clan head, Elder Shu said that this is a handwritten copy written by a teacher from the Tianyu Academy called Song Cheng. He's an instructor of the Tianyu Branch Academy, and he's known as a lunatic in the Tianyu Branch Academy. Rumor has it that he's so obsessed with his research that he's gone mad every day. The confidant told him all the information he had gathered, no matter how big or small. It was especially detailed regarding Song Cheng. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes as she spoke. Song City. What a coincidence. The other party was actually an instructor from the Tianyu Branch Academy. This saved her a lot of trouble. After getting the answer she wanted, Luo Qingtong no longer stayed in the Lanyue family. She directly boarded the carriage with Yan Yu Ju. The latter sent her off like how he came, and only put her down when they were near the inn that Luo Qingtong rented. "Miss, take care of yourself." Yan Yu Ju looked at the delicate and pretty young girl in front of him. He bowed slightly and handed over a jade pendant from his waist. "Miss, you've done a great favor for my Yan Yu family this time. Please accept this jade pendant. If there's anything you need in the future, I'll definitely do my best to help you." His eyes drooped slightly, and his eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings. His entire person was like the reflection of a clear swan, a green bamboo reflecting the moon, indescribably light as jade. Luo Qingtong looked at the jade pendant he handed over, thought for a moment, and raised her hand to take it. All right, then I'll accept deferentially. The Yan Yu family was quite powerful, and the man in front of her was also very talented. She didn't know when this jade pendant would come in handy. Since that was the case, why not accept it? Chapter 438. Oh my God! Little Pig stood in front of the windowsill and covered his eyes with his 2 hooves. He couldn't bear to see the scene below. This woman is courting death. Not only did she come back after going out for so long, she even came back with a man. They even sat in the same carriage and were talking and laughing with each other. She even accepted something from him. Oh my God! Little Pig's hind legs trembled when he sensed the oppressive aura from the man beside him. He didn't even dare to look at Yi Qianxian's face. Even an idiot would know that his face was as dark as ink. Oh my God! This man better not take out his anger on me this time. I'm really innocent. Just as Little Pig's heart was trembling, the door to the room was opened. I'm back. Luo Qingtong smiled like a blooming flower. However, she was met with silence in the room. Little Pig looked at Yi Qianren, whose face was dark and whose aura was incomparably gloomy. His legs trembled violently. In the next second, it let out a howl and scurried out of the room with its 4 hooves. Ow! I have something to do outside. You guys talk. You guys talk. His movements were so fast that he ran out of the room before Luo Qingtong could react. Strange, it's already so late. Why did he go out? Luo Qingtong looked at the sky. It was already dark. She had wasted a lot of time at the Lanyue residence, so it was already late for her to come back. However, it was difficult to be discovered in the evening. Luo Qingtong had waited outside the Lanyue residence for so long just to wait for the sky to turn dark. Heh! She knows it's late? Yi Qianxian looked at her coldly. Where did you go? He asked expressionlessly. The aura around him had already frozen to the point where it was hard to restrain. This woman actually went on a date with another man. I went to the Lanyue residence. Luo Qingtong was baffled. She blinked and felt that Yi Qianxian's words were a little strange. This tone. Why did it sound like he was extorting a confession? Could it be that the Blackfield and the Falling Moon aristocratic family had some private conflicts? As she was thinking, she walked to little Ming Zun, who was on the windowsill, and bent down to pick him up. All right, don't be angry. I'm there to detoxify people. It's not like you don't know. This man had set up an inescapable net around the Lanyue family just to catch her. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong smiled. Could it be that he was unhappy to see her return safe and sound? Her eyes curved into crescents and she immediately gave Yi Qianxian a reason to be in a bad mood. Are you disappointed to see me return safely? As she spoke, she pinched the tender flesh on his cheeks. Unfortunately, I won't give you the chance to catch me. As she spoke, she kissed little Ming Zun's lips, then licked her lips and said, Be good. He would obediently stay by her side and wait for her to grow up before he counterattacked. At that time, even if his real body came, she wouldn't be afraid. As she thought of this, Luo Qingtong smiled even more happily. Yi Qianxian looked at her with a cold expression. For some reason, the anger in his heart slowly dissipated. This woman was so heartless. If he couldn't even move her, how could others? Even so, he was still very unhappy with the man who came back with her. Whoosh! When Luo Qingtong wasn't paying attention, Yi Qianxian's figure suddenly became much thinner. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.